started. My name is Frank Williams, and I am happy that you've joined us and that you're part of this 7th annual New York State Fathering Conference. And it really is an opportunity for us to come together to help build better fathers, better husbands, better neighbors, better colleagues, and to improve the outcomes of our fathers and our neighbors and friends. And we have been working as a collective community to bring this conference to you. And in our brochure, the names of the participants are listed. So if you didn't receive a copy of the brochure, we will make sure that you get that. If we have your email or leave your email, we'll make sure that that you get a copy of it. Our conference is going to be done in 2 parts, tonight and in December. Tonight, our conference focuses on employment and on fathering in the midst of this COVID experience that we all are going through. So tonight we're going to be talking about, the impact of COVID on us in terms of employment, the impact of COVID in terms of fathers navigating, managing, helping their families to get through this experience that we all have been going through. And so we got some dynamic panelists and speakers, and of course we have Mark Morial, and we thank Ernest McFadden and his team for reaching out to Mr. Morial to help him bring to us kind of like, where we are as fathers in terms of employment and families and caring for our fathers and helping fathers to overcome the many challenges that they face. But I am just honored this evening to introduce our dignitaries. And of course, we start with our own Westchester County Executive George Latimer. I'm not sure if he's here, but if he's not, we'll just move on and hopefully he'll come and we'll have him to say a few words. Also, our own Mayor Tom Roach. He is upstate at a conference, but he said he was going to weigh in. Oh yes, Mayor Roach is here. So we want to have Mayor Roach to say a few words, and then we will go on to Westchester County Commissioner Leonard Town. So Mayor Roach, bring us greetings, and we're just so happy to have you here.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here, and the plans changed, so I'm not upstate unless if you're from New York City, then White Plains is upstate. Anything north of the left field wall is considered upstate in Yankee Stadium. So, but it's my pleasure to be with you all. I am a dad and 2 boys, and I know the challenges that are faced every day by parents and caregivers and family members, and making sure that children have the best opportunities made available to them. Frank Williams, our director of the Youth Bureau, does a wonderful job every day in making sure that we put as many opportunities in front of our young people as we can. We're very proud of that. But we know that it is very difficult, and I appreciate everyone participating in this event to try and help make it a bit easier. It's important feedback that young people get from parents. The one thing I notice when as a father, I started to go to concerts and things in school, and you see the kids get on the stage and start looking around the audience. You see them, they're looking, even if they act like they don't want you around, they really do. I'm very pleased to have Mayor Morial is the speaker tonight as a fellow former mayor, but once a mayor, always a mayor. And so we're glad to have you part of this event. And I saw Soraya Sampson, the head of our own Urban League here in White Plains, is also on the call, so that's great. But I'll bid you farewell and best of luck on the event. And I appreciate once again everybody involved in it. This is important work, and I'm very pleased that you're all doing it.
Thank you much, Mayor Roach, and thank you for your leadership. And we're going to have now our own Westchester County Commissioner of Social Services, Commissioner Leonard Towns, to bring greetings and words of acknowledgement. Commissioner Towns. You're muted. You're muted. There we go.
Got you. Testing 1, 2. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to come and have a few words. Frank, thank you for the great work you do of putting this thing together. It's been going on for 7 years, and time has flown, but this is a valuable tool that we need to continue to have move forward. There's nothing like the importance of men spending time to come together and talk about the issue of fathering, and also our women, our sisters who are in the house to support us as well. I would like to say that, I have a lot of personal experience in White Plains. I grew up and I was raised here, and it's important to recognize the role fathers play in the lives of youth. I'm going to call my good friend Mr. Simmons out because we kind of grew up together, and we grew up right down the street, 33 Fisher Avenue, and our fathers provided instruction. Our fathers instructed a lot of men in that community, and they were the standard of fathers at a time when there weren't a lot of fathers in the homes, but our fathers were recognized, and they provided good instruction to us to allow us to be where we are today. The Proverbs is clear about fathers playing the role of instructing. Mothers teach, fathers instruct. And so it's critical that we help men to provide that role in the lives of their sons and daughters. As a commissioner of the Department of Social Services, we see a lot of fathers who have been challenged by a lot of things. We see a lot of fathers who are going in and out of the prison system and the supports they need. We try our best as an agency to put things in place to assist them while they're incarcerated, preparing them for release, and then trying to assist them when they get out so they can find housing and find stable lives so we can reduce the rate of recidivism. So I think events like this have to continue to occur, and men like ourselves who are doing well need to reach out to all other men and be there for support and to encourage one another to make this happen. And I'm grateful to see the women in the house to participate in this event, because we have to do this together as the community to raise up our young fathers and our youth to become fathers later. But we need to be there to provide those examples of how that should look and how it should be done. So I just want to welcome you all out to this event. And I thank you all for coming and participating. I hope that we continue to build on this and continue to reach out to the men in our communities to be strong examples to them and systems of support. So thank you all for coming, and I'm looking forward to a great conference.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner Talent. And you're absolutely right. Working together, being a part of the village, that pouring into our homes, our schools, our jobs to help strengthen our fathers. Really, that's what our mission is. So thank you for those words, and thank you for the leadership that you're giving to Westchester County. Our own very own Barbara Andrews now will introduce the regional administrator for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Administration for Children and Family Services. So Barbara, take it away.
Thank you, Frank. Hi, everybody. It's great to see folks around the Zoom room. As Frank said, my name is Barbara Andrews. I'm with the Administration for Children and Families, and we refer to ourselves as ACF for short, and ACF is part of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Tonight, great pleasure to introduce Carlos V. Williams. This is Carlos's first time at the New York Fathering Conference, so I just want to share a few things about her. Right now, Ms. Williams is serving 3 different roles for ACF. She's the regional administrator in Region 5, and Region 4. Region 4 includes 8 states: Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Tennessee. So I hope we have some folks from those states joining us. Carlos is also the acting regional. Could I ask everyone to mute, please, if you're not speaking? Thank you. Carlos is also acting regional administrator in Region 2, and that's New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, as well as 8 federally recognized Native American tribal nations. And Carlos is also the senior advisor to ACF's Deputy Assistant Secretary for External Affairs. Now, Carlos may be new to Region 2, but she's certainly not new to fatherhood. She has led ACF's National Responsible Fatherhood Initiative, as well as the National Healthy Marriage and Relationship Initiative. She's one of the co-founders of the African American Healthy Marriage, or you know how we love acronyms in the federal government. That's AAHMI for short. And as a further indication of all that she's done in the area of fatherhood, Carlos has been the recipient of the National Partnership for Community Leadership Judge David Gray Ross Award for strengthening families and father involvement in the public sector. So please join me in welcoming Carlos Williams. Carlos, the Zoom room.
Well, thank you, Barbara. And good evening, everyone. I am really pleased to be with you today. As Barbara said, I've been involved with the fatherhood movement for a long time. When I was back in Indiana, I worked for the governor there and worked with a number of folks across the country, and Wallace McLaughlin in particular around this initiative, and was on his board for a while when I worked for the governor there in Governor O'Bannon. And so I've been engaged for many years, and it's close to my heart, and I know it's important for families. Their dads, their fathers are there, that they're engaged, whether they're living in a home or not. So thank you again. I want to thank Frank Williams and the rest of the planning committee for inviting me to speak at this very important event. And I also want to thank all of you who are there for participating. It's not easy to join a conference after a full day of work, school, parenting, or likely a combination of all those activities, but I hope that you will agree that this time will be well spent. You know, we've been through a particularly tough 20 months. That's why this year's theme, A Time to Restart, Refocus, and Renew, is timely, I think, for all of us. The agency that I work for, the Administration for Children and Families, has been actively engaged in this conference for over 7 years. My predecessor, Joyce Thomas, attended and spoke almost every year at this conference, whether it be in person or virtually. And Barbara Andrews from my staff has been an integral part of the planning of all of these conferences for several years, for 7 years. And I really do appreciate the work and dedication that she's provided to all of you. You may wonder why ACF, or Administration for Children and Families, has been so actively involved in fatherhood. Well, one of the reasons is because we recognize the importance of it, and we focus on the well-being of individuals and children, families, and communities. And so the important role that fathers play in the lives of their children, whether or not, like I said, they live in the same households or not, is critical and essential to us. We have over 60 major programs that we oversee at the Administration for Children and Families that include Head Start, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families, or TANF, child support, child welfare. And we work with fathers and make a special effort to reach out to them. And the programs are designed to improve the lives of individuals. And our goal is to promote economic and social well-being, and also to help communities to not just survive, but to thrive. We provide fatherhood grants. They're called FIRE grants, which stands for Family Focused, Interconnected, Resilient, and Essential. So nationally, ACF funds 58 grants, and 5 of these grants are to organizations in New York State, and only the state of California has more. We also fund the National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse, and you'll be hearing more from them, I think, later today and next month. Earlier, I mentioned how challenging these past 20 months have been. It hasn't been just one challenge, but many, one after another. My time is short tonight, so I'll only mention 2 challenges: COVID-19 and racial injustice. They are connected to each other, and many of the other challenges our fathers are facing as well. COVID has affected every aspect of our lives: how we work, how we play, and how we parent. Many fathers have lost their jobs or have had their hours reduced. Many fathers have been thrust into the role of home teacher. COVID has impacted not only our physical health, but also our mental health and well-being. And it's connected us to each other in ways not seen before. It's affected how we live, and it's affected how we die. And so we need to keep in mind that although we're still in the midst of it, hopefully it is beginning to go away. And we can not go back to where we were, but build back better, as President Biden says. The other area is racial injustice. it's a challenge. Our nation continues to face a crisis in this area. And we've been witness to horrific murders of George Floyd and others. And existing racial disparities and injustices have contributed to the impact of COVID and have been highlighted by the pandemic. It's a systemic issue that permeates throughout our society. And the president's executive order on racial injustice requires ACF to actively address these inequities. And we began to do that, to go through that process. So I just say to all of you dads out there and granddads and aunts and grandmas who may be with us tonight, continue to restart, refocus, and renew. And I know you're going to have a great conference, and I'm going to be on, as I told the others, until Mr. Morial finishes his remarks. He and I met actually after Katrina. We were with Rufus Lynch at Clark Atlanta University at a graduation ceremony. And we had lunch after that to talk about the needs of the folks in Katrina. So I'm glad to see you, wish you well. And I thank everyone for having me here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Williams. And thank you for your leadership and service to all of our fathers, not only in your region, but all over the country. So again, thank you. And we celebrate your leadership and your service to our nation and to our dads. And I am honored now, our friend and partner in this work, Brother Ernest McFadden, who's program administrator with the Westchester County Youth Bureau. It is through him that we bring this great leader to our conference this evening. I'm going to ask Ernest McFadden to come and to introduce and present our guest and keynote speaker all the way from down south. I spent some time in New Orleans, Mark. My mom and dad lived there, and I like the shrimp and grits and all of that. But thank you for blessing us with your participation this evening. Thank you, Ernest, and take it away.
Thank you, Frank. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Frank. And Ms. Williams, thank you for those kind remarks. I can't believe this is our 7th year of our conference. So kudos to the longevity for continuing the conference. I just want to remind the audience that after Mr. Morial speaks, put your questions in the chat box and we'll be monitoring it. And Tom will come back on and sort of take us through some of it as well. I see my good friend, Mr. Morial, has joined us. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I have the task of introducing someone who absolutely don't need any introduction. We'll be here all evening if I was to try to read his bio, but I just took sort of some snippets out of it. And again, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Mark Morial, President and CEO of the National Urban League. It's the nation's largest historic civil rights organization with over 110 years of existence. Mr. Morial has distinguished himself as being equipped both with street smarts as well as boardroom savvy. And I bear witness to that. During my time with PepsiCo, he was absolutely a leader on our Diversity, Governance, Inclusion Council, which was comprised of national leaders around the country that advised us on how we went to market with our brand. During Mr. Mark Morial's continued tenure with the Urban League, we partnered to help launch the Urban League Rising Star program, which I believe now is referred to as the Young Professionals with the Urban League. Under Mr. Morial's stewardship, the National Urban League launched a historic $100 million 5-year plan that focused on jobs, rebuild America, educate, empower, and employ initiative back in 2013. He obviously continued his work, helped create the Urban Empowerment Fund, which invested in excess of $1 billion in community investment. He has numerous recognition. One, he's recognized as one of the 100 most influential Black men Black America by Ebony Magazine, top 50 non-for-profit executive. He's received a number of presidential appointments. Under President Obama, he was appointed to chair the Census Advisory Committee, served on the Department of Education, Equity, and Excellence Commission. Under President Clinton, Mark was appointed to the 21st Century Workforce Commission, which focused obviously on workforce preparation. And again, the list go on. He's the son of the great city of New Orleans, where he was the 59th mayor of that great city. He was also past president of the United Conference of Mayors. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce someone I consider to be a good friend and an advisor, the Honorable Mark H. Morial.
Hey, good evening. Good evening, Ernest. And let me thank you for the generosity of that introduction, but also thank you for many years of friendship and engagement. As I thought about the Rising Star Award and your work at PepsiCo, I said, man, we've been around a little while.
Don't tell how long, Mark.
Don't tell nobody. Don't tell anybody. Right? Keep it tight, keep it close. I want to let you all know I am not dressed in a coat or a tie tonight. I just returned from one of the joys of fatherhood. And that joy was to see my 15-year-old daughter play on her high school varsity volleyball team, the Kent Place Dragons in Summit, New Jersey, where they are now 22-0
Wow.
and just advanced through the quarterfinal round, now on to the semifinal round in the New Jersey state championship bracket. And one of the great, great joys of fatherhood is to see a little one out there playing her eyes and her heart out, playing with her teammates and friends, and to sit and watch her and recall and reflect that she was once in your arms. You changed her diaper. You lived and cried and worked. You went through these daddy AM hair emergencies when mommy was out of town and daddy had to figure out how to do the hair, and he was not too good at it. But one of the great joys of fatherhood, which is being able to celebrate your own child, but to celebrate young people in a very engaged and profound way. I want to compliment and thank and congratulate all who are part of this fatherhood conference and this fatherhood conversation. And as I reflected, when Ernest asked me to do this, I said, you know, I do not believe I've ever participated in a conference or a discussion that was about fatherhood. Many conferences and discussions are about Black males and the successes and the celebrations and the challenges we face, and many discussions about broader discussions about family and community, but never just about something that you know is so close to me and close to many of us, and that is fatherhood. Fatherhood. I am absolutely blessed to have 3 children. The oldest to the youngest, keep your seats now, folks, are 24 years apart. As I say to people, I started young and ended late. But my children, 2 daughters and a son, have absolutely been my joy and my pride. And in our community, fatherhood is always extended beyond the biological dad. It's extended to grandfathers and father figures and uncles and father figures and neighbors, father figures and coaches, father figures and teachers, father figures in so many ways. And I think, you know, we commonly think about fatherhood and we think, wow, if you have a son, your son especially needs you, but your daughter especially needs you too. And this challenge of fatherhood is a challenge to navigate sometimes the tricky waters, because the reality is in many instances, the relationship between the two parents may not be the best. In more cases than not, the parents don't live together. And lots of specific challenges and specific issues go along with that. But also, sometimes what those type of experiences do is give people an opportunity, give children an opportunity to live in multiple worlds and experience a breadth of things. I want to talk about the evolution as I've experienced fatherhood and as I've experienced uh, early in my life having a father and having the great benefit of knowing both of my grandfathers and having a relationship with them, and knowing many, many uncles and many play uncles and many father figures, and looking up to them for their great strength and their pride. And even in the case of some family members and friends who had challenges of life, being able to also learn from some who got caught in the judicial and legal system, or some who ran into substance abuse challenges or ran into various types of challenges, as well as those whose lives seemed to be perfect. But all of those experiences help to make you who you are. But I've witnessed the evolution of fatherhood since my youngest is 15. My oldest will make 40 on February 14th of 2022. And that is to go from being a provider to being a mentor, to beginning as your children get older, to becoming more like a friend and confidant. The relationships between fathers and sons and fathers and daughters evolve. And I think as fathers, we have to understand that they evolve. And it's been so fascinating for me to, watch my relationship with my older daughter, as she is now married, as she is now a young executive, how that relationship has evolved. I'm still daddy, she's still my little girl, but I'm dealing with a mature, self-assured woman who in many ways is also a friend. I'm watching my son, who's 19, away at college, and how our relationship evolves in terms of the things we talk about. And we talk a lot over text about sports, about politics, about school. He doesn't really let me too much into his social life, but then most young people and young men can be that way. So these fatherhood relationships, evolve. And my appeal to fathers, particularly Black fathers, is we have to make this effort to work through sometimes the challenges, to build the kind of relationship that our children and young people need us. Even if you can't, they need what you can do for them materially, no doubt. And but they need all of us from an emotional and a spiritual and a sense of our souls. They need us. They need our encouragement. They need our tough love sometimes. But they truly, truly need us. And we have to think about that, and we have to remember that. One of the things we work on at the National Urban League is we work on those returning from a period behind the wall, as I like to call it, who return to community. And one of the things we work hard on is try to help people, particularly men, to reunite with children, reunite with family, restore some bonds of love and trust. So it is complicated, and it is not easy to be a dad. There's ups and there's downs. You can't go into a relationship just think children, because they are children, going to listen to what you say and you're all knowing. It is so interesting. My children challenge me. Young people challenge. They challenge. That's what they do. And that's a healthy thing for them to be able to challenge. And but it's also a level of maturity for them to understand when to challenge and when to not. So I think we do face, one says, do we face a crisis of fatherhood? I want to address, because I think I would be remiss if I didn't, that what we cannot do as a community, and let me talk specifically about the African American community and the Black community, we cannot fall prey to what I call stereotypes. There's a lot of stereotypes about Black men. Number one, that we are irresponsible fathers, which is false. The data does not demonstrate that. Two, that there are more Black men in prisons than there are in college. Once again, false. There are more Black men in colleges and community colleges and four-year colleges than there are Black men in prison. We hear these things repeated without attribution, and they if you will, produce and incentivize negative stereotypes that are false and unsupported by evidence, that Black men are drug dealers or are prone to violence. Do not fall victim to these stereotypes, and we have to defeat them while at the same time understanding there are men with challenges, there are people with challenges, there are Black men with challenges, but there are white, Latinx, and Asian men with challenges in American life. We have to confront these negative stereotypes and not allow them to become the facts of the matter. We have to acknowledge the challenges we face while at the same time recognizing that Black fathers are as loving, as caring, as generous as any other dad anywhere. And don't you dare forget that, while understanding the great challenges and problems we face based on this long legacy of racism and exclusion in this country, but our ability to overcome it, our ability to withstand it, our ability to stand on our feet in this moment. Families are changing. They've been changing for a long time. The traditional nuclear family, where you have a male father, female mother, children, and they live at home in the same house, is not the rule, but it is more the exception. But families can be grandparents and grandfathers. They can be people of the same sex. The families can be multi-generational. You see many types of families that exist. I just make an appeal to all of you dads out there to make a special effort every morning to love and care for your children, to do something special. And sometimes something special doesn't have to be material. It can be a word of encouragement, and realize that many times our young people, our kids, our sons, our daughters, they need encouragement. They don't need ridicule. They don't need to be scolded constantly. We have to have tough love from time to time, but we also need encouragement and uplift, and we have to provide it to our young people. The National Urban League today is very active in serving hundreds of thousands of young people in after-school programs, hundreds of thousands of teenagers and young adults in workforce development programs. We work with people who want to become home buyers, people who own businesses. We've been working to educate the community to increase vaccine acceptance. And then we're working, and as I close, on this protection of democracy, because the assault on voting rights is a serious one. It's a dangerous one, and we have to battle it and fight it in these times. So I want to raise my hand and salute to all the dads for being great dads, for being loving dads. I want to challenge those dads who may say, I don't have the kind of relationship with my children that I like. Make an effort. Make an effort. talk to them and to discuss with them if you are in that kind of situation. But also you can be a dad to a young person, a niece, a nephew. I have nieces and nephews, many, and then I have many play nieces and play nephews that I work with. Be a dad, be a father figure, be a dad, give a word of encouragement, support, help someone when they're down. That's what fatherhood is all about. That is indeed what it is all about. So Ernest, I know that this is a dynamic conference with many speakers. Proud to be a part of it on this evening. Thank all of you who've supported the work of the Urban League. And I want to lift up all the dads, all the granddads, all the dads to be, all the dad figures, the father figures in our community, because you truly, truly are a treasure. So thank you for listening tonight. I should mention my daughter. Yeah, they won tonight. I was so proud. I may have mentioned that earlier. I keep talking about it. And that's why I'm wearing the sweatshirt. We all the parents dress up with swag because we're representing the brand. But thank you very much, Ernest. Thanks to all of you for having me tonight. God bless you and God keep you. Be strong.
Thank you, my friend Mark. Let's have a round of applause for Mark. Thank you. Thank you so much, my friend. As we shared earlier, if you have any questions, Mark, can you stick around for a few minutes?
I can stay. Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it. If there's any questions for Mark, Tom, you want to put them in the chat box or just have people respond, unmute themselves?
Let's put any questions in the chat box and we'll get them
Okay, excellent.
elevated.
Okay. I don't see anything as of yet. See lots of comments, Mark. Great words of inspiration. Lots of comments.
There's one. What are some of the next steps for fathers? Is a question from Scott Leach.
I think the only way I can answer that is depends on where you are, right? As a dad in your journey as a father, it's not easy to say what the next step, but I think that the most important thing for fathers is to be generous with your time, to be loving with your spirit, to be caring of our children. You know, our children can be very fragile. They can be very, and we need dads. Boys need dads, girls need dads. They need that figure. They need both the tenderness and the strength that fathers can exhibit. I just think I wake up every day and ask myself, how can I be a better dad? I love text because what texting has given me an opportunity to do is text my children, talk to them every day, no matter where they are. I can text them in the morning with good morning. I can text them with good luck. I can text them, how's it going? I can text them on an area of interest, a mutual interest. Communicate with your children. You know, sometimes I have a friend who says, my daughter won't talk to me. She doesn't want to engage in conversations. I said, you know, my teenagers kind of don't want to talk to dad sometimes too. But I tell you what, if I text them, I always get a response. You know, so sometimes you have to find a way to communicate with your children, but you know, be generous with your children and grandchildren. Do give what you can. If you feel and realize that sometimes they need an ear, and yes, sometimes they need pushing, encouragement, shoving. Sometimes they need tough love, but sometimes they don't need tough love. They need understanding. They need compassion.
Thank you, Mark. We have one more. We have several questions. The next one I'm looking at is from Allison here. It says, how would you describe the kind of father you are now versus when with your first child?
Much more patient. I got more patience.
Amen. I'll agree with that.
I mean, having seen the promised land. Having been through the journey, I'm less nervous. I'm more patient. I'm more understanding. I'm more confident. And I think any father, any parent will tell you that on the first one, you don't know what to do sometimes, don't know what to expect. You don't want to admit it. So I think that in my life, I'm, candidly, because I was a young dad, I'm in a better situation financially. And my ability to, to be able to do certain types of things may be a little bit greater and that's the evolution of age. But the biggest thing is patience and an understanding. When you see things, you're not thrown off because you realize it's part of the growth and part of the evolution of your child.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hey, Ernest, we have a few more in the chat, but Tom Boyer has a question from evidently overseas, either
Go ahead, read that out, Tom.
Greece or Rome. So, Tom, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Wow.
All the way.
All the way from
Oh, my friend Tom Boyer. Unmute yourself, Tom. Unmute yourself, Tom.
Okay. Guys, I would say that that was a mistake. First of all, I'm not in Rome. Rome is just a background picture of when I was in Rome.
You had us fooled good.
I've been to Rome, but not there right now. Just a background picture. But I just want to say, I see my grandkids every day. I just have the one daughter, but every day that I see them, I try to let them know how special they are, both our daughter and my grandkids. I try my best to encourage them every day, but I also give them a little bit of spirituality. Let them know that, how blessed you are to be where you are and to be able to do the things that you're doing. I can't, continue to raise my daughter or grandchildren without letting them know that, hey, you did not get this on your own. You did not do this on your own. As someone who grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, in and around Birmingham, having dealt with the struggles and so forth, I also let them know, part of my background, where I came from, because I was chewed out once for not letting them know. Our daughter, when she found out that I was involved in a lot of demonstrations and civil rights activity around, the Birmingham area in the 60s, she says, "Dad, why didn't you tell me about this?" Well, for a long time, I could not speak about that. It was something that I was suppressing because of all the bad feelings and all the things that we went through. But again, I think it's important to let our kids know the history so that they can carry that on and try and make things better. And as a result of this, my grandkids know all about it now. They've opened up to their teachers in school when they're discussing Black history, so on and so forth. But this is all part of educating our children. But again, I think it's very important to keep that spirituality aspect there and let them know that, hey, there's a higher power upstairs there that's with you. I tell my grandkids who are very young, if you're having a problem with an exam, hey, there's no harm in saying, "God, will you help me?" But you got to put the work in yourself. You got to be strong, put forth the effort, and God will help you. So I just wanted to make that comment.
I love it. I love it. It's a powerful and to the point, and reminds me so much of what I heard when I was growing up, right? Which is the spiritual underpinning. Is important, and don't be afraid to introduce it and utilize it.
Exactly.
Excellent. Mark, and again, we want to be respectful of your time. We have a bunch of questions, so I'm going to ask if we can maybe take 3 more, and I'm just going to go down the list.
Okay.
I have one here. I work in the men's group at the county correctional facility. What is your message to dads who are incarcerated?
It's tough because incarceration is different if you're there for a short period versus a long period. And I think that correctional facilities across the nation have been under-resourced in their ability to prepare our men and our women who are incarcerated for life beyond the bars, beyond the wall, by helping them to prepare themselves for what they will face: the need for housing, the need for a job, the need in some cases to reunite with family. You know, if you are in behind the wall, you can send letters. Sometimes you have access to emails. Stay in touch with your children. Stay in touch with the people who love you. Even if they don't respond or don't respond immediately, make an affirmative effort to keep the lines of communication open, and make a commitment to family reunification. And sometimes, look, I am working right now with 2 childhood friends. One is recently released after a long period of incarceration, 35 years. The other one is hoping for a release in about a year. And in working with them and understanding all of the challenges and problems that they face, it is not easy. And of course, National Urban League, we work in reentry, and some of the better programs that we have begin to work with people in St. Louis, for example. We began working with men before they are released. We work with them to have what's called a release plan. We talk to them sometimes in somewhat of a spiritual sense, sometimes in a peer sense, sometimes to make sure if they have underlying issues, mental health issues, substance abuse issues, that they address it and have a plan to address it once they leave. So I think it meant behind bars, it should be encouraged. And I think the facility should encourage visits by family, but even if you can't have visits, to maintain in communication. Keep the lines of communication open. Because sometimes when you're in there and maybe it's time to go home, and family members will say, well, you haven't been in touch. And the person who's been incarcerated may say, but you haven't been in touch. I've been dealing with the difficulties of this period of incarceration. We have to encourage family unification, unification with friends. It is, and look, in some instances, thank God for the moms, thank God for the mothers, boy, because I tell you, in every instance I know, the mom is there. The mom is there, even if others have moved on, thank God for the moms in a very, very profound way. But those would be my thought. We have to encourage the rebuilding of relationships. We do a poor job in this country in helping people make the transition back to society. We do a poor job. We incarcerate far too many nonviolent offenders, and then we place barriers on them after they leave. You can't get an apartment. You can't go to school at certain places. I mean, President Obama and others have tried to confront some of those issues and to allow people who've been incarcerated to get Pell Grants to be able to go and pursue higher education. But we have to fix this broken, debilitating system. But in the short run, while we work to fix it, and we have to fix it, we have to also create pathways for people's family to get back with their families and encourage them to stay in touch with and in communication with their families while they are behind the wall.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Margaret.
I want you to know that is my perpetual message with the men in the group. So thank you for reinforcing that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the work you do.
Two more questions if you have time, Mark, and this timing is perfect. This is someone, Chris Burdick. He's with the New York State Assembly. He has a question. Please let me know whether there is legislation which you support to help support fathers in their challenges, particularly for underserved communities.
So I think for underserved communities, I will say a much more significant focus on mental health, substance abuse, and economic opportunity. Economic opportunity. People have dignity and pride when they can work and take care of their bills and have a life of some dignity. So it's not just about substance abuse interventions or mental health interventions. It's also about economic opportunity, because lack of economic opportunity is one of the drivers of many of the conditions we see. We cannot be hesitant to talk about the root causes of poverty and violence and incarceration in our communities. In many instances, we respond to people who are without a house, homeless citizens, incarcerated. We have spent the better part of half a century incarcerating people who have addictions to control dangerous substances and drugs. We've incarcerated half the people. I think the numbers showed about 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago, half the people in the United States who are arrested were arrested for something related to marijuana. So stunning statistic, right? So, those of you who are in elected office, those of you who are in legislatures, whether they be state or county, local council leaders, council members, my encouragement is to be a proactive legislator. Propose legislation. Use your voice, use your power. You can propose a law. I can propose a law, but I can't introduce it. When I was in the Louisiana Senate, I introduced a lot of bills. Now I can advocate for them, but I can't introduce it. I have to come to you and ask you to introduce it on our behalf. So I think economic opportunity is paramount. Paramount. I think substance abuse, investments in that, investments in mental health interventions as well. My staff, interestingly, we do workforce development at the National Urban League. My staff, one of our programs, we were having a challenge with an attendance challenge. We had people who were coming to the class 2 days a week and missing 2 days a week. And one of my staff people said, and it was a spot on observation. She says, so we're dealing with depression. We're dealing with people who come for 2 days and then the third day they can't get out of bed. They're dealing with so that the mental health issues that they face, this is a recovery program, the post-traumatic stress was affecting their ability to be able to get what they needed to take advantage of job opportunities. So it is complex, it is complicated, but be on the offense when it comes to these things, but then continue. We have a lot to do in New York State, New Jersey, and all across the nation to fix the challenge of poverty, fix the challenges of what we face. And what I am concerned about is that with this spike in gun violence, they call it a spike in gun violence across the nation, which is a COVID post-response said, what some want to do is resort to yesterday's failed approaches, pass new laws, incarcerate more people, flood neighborhoods with more police officers, policies which had awful consequences. No, we need new approaches. We need new ways. We have to deal with root causes as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. And several other questions referred to resources. So what I will do is I'll put the Urban League, National Urban League link in the chat box, and feel free to tap
Thanks,
into
Ernest.
their website. I couldn't close without acknowledging my president and of the Westchester Urban League, Soraya Sampson, have joined
Oh,
us.
Soraya's on?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mark, again, thank you, my friend. And I'm going to turn it over to Tom for a wrap up here.
Appreciate you, Ernest. God bless you, man.
All right, Mark, as always, my friend.
Onward. And Soraya, onward. Thank you.
All right, Tom, I'll turn it over to you. Tom, can you hear me?
Tom Boyer?
No, Tom.
There, I got it. So
There you go. Thank you.
yes, thank you. Thank you, Ernest. Thank you, Mark. And if we could right now, if you have a takeaway that you, the biggest takeaway that you got from Mark's talk or any of the questions he answered, just put it in the chat. Something that you were inspired by, something that the biggest takeaway you got from it, and we'll just keep it brief and we'll kind of compile those. We're going to do something special with those, but just let's give Mark an idea of how we felt about his presentation. And now we are going to go to Donnie, correct?
Yeah. Let me just, if I can, Tom, and again, we want to thank Ernest and Mark for this wonderful presentation. And again, I thought his remarks were spot on. So again, we thank Mr. Moriel for spending this evening with us to give us his thoughts and his perspective. Now we go into our first panel presentation, our first session. Our friend and colleague in this work, Donnie Simmons, who is Professor Donnie Simmons. He runs the Black and Hispanic Male Initiative at WCC, Westchester Community College. He also coordinates the Fatherhood Initiative for the City of White Plains. So Donnie, thank you. And please present our first session, which is on employment.
Thank you so much, Frank, for that kind introduction. Hey, everybody. Before we go into this, I just want everybody to just put your hands together for a second and take a deep breath. This is done so we can reconnect. What happens is, according to neuroscience, which I am a geek of, the brain turns on and turns off every 20 minutes. So what we need is some physical contact to drive that energy so that we can focus once again. So just put your hands together, just take a deep breath and exhale. Inhale, exhale. Okay, we're good. We're good. We're back. So I'm gratified to be your moderator for our first panel discussion. This session will focus on employment and the workforce. So it begs the question, what's out there? What's out there for dads? How do I get involved? How do I fit in? So our panel is here to share insights, experiences, and expertise as a means to help to aspire workers to better support themselves and their families. So I believe our first speaker is on. He's a student of mine, right? One of the loves of my life. His name is Anthony Miller. Let me just check to see if he's on. Anthony, can you hear me? Okay, I think what he's going to do, right now he's on his phone. Anthony works 2 jobs, 2 shifts, and he's taking about 10 or 15 minutes out in order to be with us. So I want to see if he can reconnect. But in the interim, what I want to do is I'll segue over to our second panel speaker. When Anthony comes in, hopefully he'll ping me or he'll give me some indication that he's in. His story is very, very compelling. He comes from humble beginnings. He's worked diligently through some difficult times, and he has sort of arrived. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to segue over to Dr. Sterling Jasper. Okay. And let me provide an introduction to Dr. Jasper. Okay. Dr. Jasper is the owner of Express Employment Professionals of White Plains, New York, a leading staffing provider helping job seekers find work with a wide variety of local businesses. Other background experiences include positions with General Electric, Johnson & Johnson, Citibank, and Merrill Lynch, totaling over 20 years in talent management and human services. 8 years of active military service, a doctoral degree in adult leadership and development. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Sterling Jasper.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. I'm really, Frank, let me start by thanking you for this opportunity. I'm not sure, like everyone else, why I had not been a part of this particular event over the last 7 years, but that's okay. Better late than never. So I've been asked to kind of talk about my experience in corporate America. While I have a background in staffing, I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey. Actually, I'm going to kind of dovetail it a little bit and get on some of the points that Mr. Morrell made. So I have 8 minutes. I'm going to take 4 minutes and talk a little bit about how do you refocus as a father? Someone asked a question earlier, well, what's next? What do I do next? I'll tell you that, I'm going to start with, it's a given that you need to educate yourself in a space. It doesn't matter what the space is, you can decide, but you need to invest in yourself. And whether that's a certificate, associate's degree, or just reading and taking some classes on your own, there is a number of opportunities that's available to you that you can get out there. I think workforce development, the work that Ernest is doing, I know that there is a lot of opportunities and programs out there. There's funding. So if money is an issue, there are opportunities. You just have to raise your hand, be disciplined about it, get out there and get about it and get it done. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. You cannot show up and not have any value to add to anything and think that doors are just going to open. It's just not going to happen that way. I want to talk about, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, and as a coach, my 20 years, right? I want to talk about, and I'm going to capture them this way. So I will talk about my time in the military and special forces for 10 years. I'm going to talk about my time in operations. I'm going to talk about my time in sales. I'm going to talk about my time in manufacturing, and I'm going to talk about my time financial services and HR this way. And so therefore, it doesn't necessarily matter where you come from or where you're starting, but there's some common denominators that I'm absolutely certain you've got to have in order to move forward. And I like the title of I think it's called Restart, Refocus, and Renew. I'm going to focus on, I'm going to look at or pay particular attention to the area of refocusing yourselves. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is that make decisiveness a habit, right? It doesn't matter where you're working or what you're doing. If you're not decisive, your level of decisiveness is up one day and down the next, you need to address it. At the end of the day, in order for you to get out there and to kind of get things back on track, whatever you identify back on track to be, you need to refocus and you need to be decisive about whatever those things are. I am a big proponent, and this is back to my military days, of having my disciplines around routines. My routines are very set. I know what to expect. I know what to expect when my whirlwinds are happening. You too will have whirlwinds every single day, right? You need to understand how you're going to operate and act when things get out of whack, and they will get out of whack. Believe me. I like to use this phrase: learn to excel in chaos. You need to learn to excel in chaos with this world we live in. And however you're going to do that, I think routines will be very helpful in that process. The next thing I want to talk about is you need to learn to innovate and or adapt quickly, right? So it doesn't matter, again, whether you're in manufacturing, sales, a street sweeper, whatever, your broom breaks, you got to figure out how to get the trash out the street. You need to figure out how to innovate, right? And how to adapt quickly so that you are not thrown off of your path too far. And I think a lot of times what we'll find as fathers is that our whirlwinds get the best of us. And then all of a sudden you're trying to figure out, how do I get this thing back on track, right? So setting goals, I call them not just setting goals, but setting effective goals, setting goals that are going to impact your behaviors, not setting goals that's going to change a situation. It is all about you. It's about you. The world doesn't owe you not a dang on thing. It's just how it is. I've been blessed in so many ways. Someone said earlier, my blessings overflow every single day, but I still have to show up, right? You still have to show up every single day, irrespective of whatever it is that you're battling. And then the final thing I want to say about that is, you learn how to harness your emotions, right? It's very difficult when you come to work and you got a whole bunch of things on your plate, and all of those things are impacting your abilities to manage through your attitude. And then you show up one day, I'm ready to work. The other day, you don't show up at all, or you show up late with an attitude. Those things are not going to do it in this new world that we're in, right? Again, people are expecting you to show up and to participate. And so you participate, and we like to say, in whatever you bring to the table. If you are a team player, then you need to raise your hand and offer advice to the rest of the team members. If you're not a team player, it's okay, right? At the end of the day, then just get out of the way and let the rest of the people do what they have to do. But it's imperative that you understand who you are. And to that end, I want to talk a little bit about this idea of learning from our lives. It was said earlier about the experiences that we bring to the tables as fathers. And I will tell you that you can learn a heck of a whole lot from where you've been, from your own journeys, right? And then the question becomes how you take the experiences that you have, the path that you've walked or you've journeyed, and then you use those things so that you can get to the next level, right? So that you're drawing from those experiences. And as soon as you are able to do that, you're gonna move along this thing called the maturity continuum. And what I mean by that is the maturity continuum has to do with your level of dependency as an individual. We are dependent on our parents when we are born. And then we, at that adolescent age, become independent. We know everything, right? And then should you live long enough and you start to become what they call wise in your old age, you'll become interdependent, meaning you will be looking back on the life experiences that you have journeyed, and you're using those things and welcoming and sharing those things with the people that are in your lives. And I think that's extremely important. You heard Mr. Morrell talk about being a father, being a provider, a mentor, and a friend. Well, that's the same thing as a maturity continuum, right? All of a sudden, you are now given back in a way that you should be given back as fathers to those who are following you along, and helping them to learn from their personal journeys and their lives, etc. So I think that, you're going to get challenges. We all get challenges every day. There's a lot of chaos out there. You need to be able to discern that. The best thing, we used to have a saying in the military, when I was in the Rangers, we would say, close your eyes and cup your ears. Close your eyes and cup your ears. Learn to do that. You'll be surprised how much you see better and you hear more when you are closed, your eyes are closed, and cup your ears, tune out all the noise that's around you and listen to what your body, what the surrounding area is trying to tell you. And I think when you do those things, I've done those things to kind of get my emotions in check, to kind of help harness and get the attitude in the right place so that I can show up ready for the battle every single day and not kind of half stepping. So let me see, my 8 minutes is over. All right, I'm done. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
You got 2 minutes, brother.
I have 2 minutes. Great. So
Sure.
The final thing I'm going to throw out there is that if you were paying attention to Mr. Morrell, you see all those books behind him, and a lot of you, maybe you're paying attention to some of the news media. You see all those books. you need to start your own your library of books, right? Things that you're going to go to as sources of information. Some of the ones I have on my desk, and I have tons of books. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is a book I absolutely recommend you read. It's one of the top 10 books ever written in the country. There's a book, John Maxwell, that calls The Laws of Leadership. Some of you are going to be leaders, others are going to be followers, right? So you need to understand the 21 laws of leadership, whether you're going to be a leader or a follower, right? That's going to help you be able to contribute every single day when you show up. For those of you who are trying to learn to read and write again, for whatever reason, it might have been a long time, there's books out there. There's one of my favorite called How to Write a Sentence. And how to read a sentence, right? So if you don't know how to write or read, at the end of the day, reading and writing is fundamental to success, period. That's just how it is. Doesn't matter where you're starting. You can just pick up a pen and a paper and a book and get on it starting today. And then the book out there called Learning from Our Lives is a book by, I think it's Pierce Dominiques. And that particular book talks about how to look at your history and your background to help you understand who you are, understanding or recognizing that your particular experiences will impact your journeys and how you see the world that you're entering in, trying to navigate every single day. All right, that's it. How's that?
Thank you very much, Sterling. I really, really appreciate that. You're right on time. You hit it on the mark. And hopefully during the Q&A session, we'll have others who will chime in.
Okay.
So I'm still waiting for my student. We've been texting back and forth. He's trying to get in via his phone. I'm trying to work with our genius in residence, Tom Kelly, to try to get him on. But in lieu of that, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Allison Madison. So just give me a moment and allow me to properly present her. So Allison Madison is the president of Madison Approach Staffing Incorporated, is a second-generation recruiter and entrepreneur starting her career in 1996. Madison Approach Staffing Incorporated provides workforce solutions to companies ranging from 5 to 5,000 employees, offering staffing, training, and HR consultation. They are the go-to workforce solution for organizations throughout the tri-state area. They find and train and employ the people companies need to grow, innovate, and remain flexible in today's rapidly changing workforce. Allison is a member of the board of directors of both the New York State and Westchester Putnam Workforce Development Boards. Allison is a member of the board of directors for the Business Council Education Foundation. She is co-chair of the BCW HR Council and former member of the board of directors of the Westchester Human Resource Management Association. So without further ado, here's Allison. Take the floor.
Thanks so much. I appreciate the introduction. And thank you all for asking me to speak with you today. I'm quite honored. And I have to say, Sterling, every time I hear you talk, I'm always impressed with you. And I'm just honored to be sharing this platform with you. So I wanted to, kind of dive in a little bit differently. As you mentioned, actually, I'm a second generation recruiter. My mom actually started our company back in 1988, which was actually the first year, believe it or not, that legislation passed that women could actually get a bank loan without a man's signature. So that is always a factoid that I find fascinating, that it's only 1988 that was possible. I became a recruiter by accident. I'm an education, I was a science teacher by education. And I ended up working for my mom by accident. And I've discovered that, other than education, the most significant way to affect the trajectory of somebody's life is really through work opportunities. I was hearing Mark say before that such a powerful way to help someone is through opportunity, and without opportunity, there is nothing else. So I've often said that that we in my company, that we build communities one job at a time. I'm always very cognizant that, you know, a job means putting food on the table and a roof over someone's head. You know, as far as these takeaways for today, though, given that my background is really in recruiting, I really wanted to be able to give participants some real takeaways about, well, how do you get a job? You know, how do you navigate the workforce? You know, why companies hire, you know, how to identify your target employer, where and when to look for a job, how to craft an effective resume, those sorts of things that, you know, are real tangible things that you can take with you into the world or when you're looking for a job. The thing I always tell everybody is that in reality, companies only hire people for one of three reasons. It's either to make money, save money, or affect the bottom line. That's really it. And when you are out there looking for a job, that is how you need to position yourself, right? How can I help this company make money, save money, or affect the bottom line? And once you start orienting yourself in that way, it makes you far more a competitive person in the workforce. As far as, you know, where do you start though when you're starting your job search? I always tell people it's really almost more important and more valuable to identify your target employer than to just simply look for jobs. You know, there are a multitude of reasons why you end up self-selecting out of a particular employer, or out why you lose out on an opportunity with a job. Oftentimes it's basics, right? Things like, well, you know, the commute doesn't work for me. The hours don't work for me. There aren't opportunities for growth. There's, you know, I need that alignment with the values of the organization, right? So that is key as well, is that companies, one of the things I tell people is that companies hire for fit, for skill, but then fire for fit, right? So they're hiring people with a certain skill set, but then it falls apart because there isn't that values alignment. So the first place to start off when you're really looking for work, or if you're a service provider guiding, you know, your people in this process, one of the best things you can help them to do is to, you know, identify your target employer, to make sure that they're who you want to work for, and then market yourself into that organization. You know, there's and the other piece of that is doing your research, right? So it's beyond just researching the company that you want to work for, but the total picture, right? Understanding your own value, right? So you can properly negotiate, you know, for salary. So doing that research about, you know, workforce, you know, about, you know, what are people in this field earning? That will make you a far more competitive, again, that you'll be able to, you know whether or not you're being underpaid or, you know, or undervalued, right? Whether it's on your job search or in your current organization. There's also the idea of where and when to search for a job. You know, it's too late to start thinking about your next job when you're out of a job. It's essential to be constantly on the lookout for job opportunities, for connections, and working your network, right? Building that network is so vital. And like I said, it can't be done, you know, just when you're looking for your next job. You know, I sponsor for the youth summit for many years, and for many years I was the mystery employer, right? And the goal was that when I was able to view these young adults throughout the day, right? And then at the end, we would announce that, you know, we were going to be hiring someone from the event for a summer internship. The purpose of that was for, these young people who are just coming into the workforce to realize that you never know who's looking, right? And that as you're, kind of walking, through life, all of these opportunities are potentially there, right? If you avail yourself of them, and if you're really making those really great connections and putting your best self forward all of the time. And that's so important because, you could be, I've actually hired my waitress, for example, someone who's, waiting tables and it does a fantastic job. You know what, that customer may be looking for a customer service person, right? And they go, hey, you're fantastic. How's about you come work for me? So orienting yourself toward the idea of I am always looking for opportunity, and opportunities have to be cultivated, right? So part of that though is absolutely essential, is doing those relationships. But there's also the reality of the job search, which is job portals and these algorithms, which aren't going away. I'm not necessarily a fan because unless the algorithm is written really brilliantly, they can serve to become more of a hindrance than helping people get into jobs. But like I said, they're not going away. So part of that process is making sure that you know how to work those algorithms and making yourself searchable, right? And making sure that your resume gets through those job portals. So which kind of dovetails into the resume, right? Everyone has the resume, the CV, and the sad reality is that most recruiters only spend about 5 seconds reviewing any resume. That is a tough thing to deal with, all right? Because you get one, they always say you get one chance to make a first impression. Well, that is really tough if what you've got is a piece of paper that's supposed to represent your totality as an employee, right? And you get one resume, right? And one shot at submitting that. And one of the things that I try to help people get perspective on is that resume is your brand. It's a marketing tool. In the same way, when you're walking down the aisle at the grocery store and you see all the cereal boxes, right? You want your resume to be instantaneously recognizable, right? When you walk down that aisle, the kids cereal from the health brand, right? Just by the packaging, right? You don't have to read at the details, right? Just by the packaging. So one of the kind of the cheats that I kind of will suggest that people use, all the answers for that algorithm and how to get yourself at the top of that pile is in that job description. So though, and I'm not suggesting that you cut and paste from the job description onto your resume, not saying that at all. But if you're applying to that job, there has to be at least 5, 6, 7 of those bullet points on those requirements that you have. So get those at the very top of your resume, so that way when that recruiter opens up the resume, and realistically, when you open up a Word document, you're only seeing the top half of it. Right. Years ago, it used to be, above the fold, right, on newspaper, those of you who remember newspapers, right? So when you're looking at that resume, make sure that those key points, the things that that is going to grab that recruiter's attention, are at the top of that page. Then if you, hook them, same way, a marketing piece hooks somebody, they'll keep reading. But if you make them work for it and make them go, does this person have the skill set? I'm not really sure. They're moving on to the next resume, right? Because time is money in business. Remember, you got to make money, save money, and affect that bottom line, right? So the other piece of that resume needs to demonstrate how you're going to do that, right? Everybody has the capacity to improve that bottom line. They're gonna, and the more you can quantify and articulate how you're able to do that, the more you're going to be able to catch that recruiter's attention. So really, that's really vital to be able to get that detail. And so again, for the providers out there who are helping guide fathers or people in the workforce who are trying to get those jobs, helping them to get that that data on their resumes and making sure that they're using those keywords, making sure that their resume is impeccable, is really, like I said, it's your first chance to make a good impression. So then the other obstacle I'm kind of seeing, I see something pop up that I had about 3 minutes, or is that, it's probably down from now, from when that came up. I was going to say
no, you definitely have another minute. You got another minute.
All right,
Okay.
because I am trying to get as much information out there as possible.
Sure.
The ghosting thing, right? Everybody has dealt with ghosting. It's brutal. It's terrible. But it goes both ways. And what I counsel my clients, as much as I counsel my candidates, is, remember that golden rule, right? Which is, do unto others as you would have done to you. So, and that other piece that I just referenced before is you never know where jobs are going to come from. So, say, okay, maybe that particular job doesn't work out, but if you acted, if you kind of left an employer hanging, were not responsive, didn't communicate, any other future job opportunities, you've now eliminated yourself from as well, right? So you might have been tied, right, for that job, but now because maybe you were not responsive, that undermines your opportunity for that job. So getting through that, that engagement, that communication is really so essential in the job seeking process, and making sure that asking questions throughout the process as the job seeker, knowing what to expect from the process, saying to someone, hey, I just sent in my resume. When would be a good time for me to follow up? Should I call you in 2 weeks? And getting that, if you will, that buy-in from that person saying, yes, we'll be doing this in 2 weeks, and then follow through on that commitment. What you say matters as long as you are following through on those commitments. And again, that whole process is almost like dating, right? My dad used to say, if you go on a date, don't judge a guy by how he treats you, judge him how he treats the waitress, right? So this is part of the process. As a recruiter, I'm looking at that, right? Does a person respond back to my emails? Are they responsive to my voicemails? Do they follow through on the things that they do, right? Because you can look great on paper and you can perform great in the interview, but it's your behaviors that are actually a better indicator of how you're going to be in real life, right? So making sure that as long as you are responsive and you're not ghosting people, you're being responsive, you will probably get that response back, right? And positioning yourself as that person that's a really great candidate.
Fantastic.
I was burning through my notes as fast
No,
as I could.
this was amazing, really. And I'm hoping on the back end there are many more questions coming from dads, because you just walk through a critical piece and a critical lens of how we get from step 1 to step 2. It's just not automatic. There's a sequence that takes place, and there
Absolutely.
are prerequisites and everything else. So that was extremely powerful. Thank you.
Right. Absolutely. And as I said, I'm happy to, be a resource to, both the fathers out there as well as any of the service providers. If they need, guidance on the details, I'm happy to get that to them.
Appreciate it. And just so that all of you know, I've been working with Tom to try to get Anthony on board. If you scroll across and you look at the photos, you can actually see him working. Right now he's working the deli. He has his camera on, it's on and off, but there's an issue with regard to his audio. So we're gonna still work through this. We have still Dean coming up, and I'm about to introduce Dean. So between myself and Tom, hopefully we can get Anthony in before it's all said and done. So again, Much obliged, Allison. Killed it. So now let's go to Dean, and let me talk to you guys about him for a moment. So Dean Akbar is the Senior Director of Human Resources and Organizational Development at White Plains Hospital. He has spent the last 14 years working in HR, talent development, and talent management. Dean oversees several areas, including employee onboarding, talent management and mobility, employee training and development, employee engagement, and organizational development. Prior to his time at White Plains Hospital, Dean spent 10 years at Northwell Health leading employee development initiatives. Dean graduated from Morgan State University with a bachelor's in psychology and from Hofstra University with a master's degree in industrial organizational psychology. A man from my tether, psychology, all right? So without further ado, here's Dean Akbar.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And thank you for the introduction, Donnie. And thank you to the planning committee for inviting me to be a part of this committee and this great event. I look forward to being a resource in any way that I can. So I just wanted to start by echoing what's been shared around the importance of fathers within the family structure. I know that a lot of the lessons that I've learned, a lot of my accomplishments, a lot of the achievements that I've had is a direct result of the support, the guidance, and the instruction that I've received from my father. And I'm starting to realize the joy and some of the challenges associated with fatherhood, having two young children myself. And so I think one of the points that resonated with me with Mr. Moriel is that having patience is key, and I'm learning that. So I have a daughter who is just turned 3, going on 30, and a son who's 18 months. So as Donnie mentioned, my name is Dean Akbar. I'm the Senior Director for Human Resources and Organizational Development at White Plains Hospital. In addition to what I do at the hospital in my former role within Human Resources, I also chair our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. We do a lot of work with workforce initiatives. We do a lot with the patient population and working with the committee. I also serve on the Workforce Development Committee for Westchester Community College, as well as Westchester County Association. And just to tie back to what Mr. Muriel shared about the economic opportunity, I wanted to spend some time today to discuss employment opportunities within healthcare. And so if we think about the current state of employment, we know that the last 20 months has had a tremendous impact on life as we know it. And we go back to this time last year, and maybe even earlier in the year, there was a lot of uncertainty, right? Around many things, including the job landscape. So we were forced to stay at home, to quarantine. Had a tremendous impact, financial impact on individuals and families. And if you look at the job landscape now, it's actually quite drastically different. I just got out of a recruiting meeting where a report was shared in terms of how many open positions we had here. We had close to 300 open positions here at White Plains Hospital. And if you go back a year, this is unprecedented. And this is not just unique to White Plains Hospital, but it's also, you can see this in other industries and other organizations. And I like to think that this is an optimal time for job seekers. Many industries are growing, healthcare is growing. Ken wants to talk about some of those opportunities in healthcare. And so typically when we think about careers in healthcare, what do we think about? We think about doctors and nurses, right? And so there are other opportunities and pathways outside of becoming a physician or a nurse. And so what are some of the roles that make up, what are some of the roles in the hospital? So nurses and physicians do make up 25% to 33% of our workforce. But there are approximately maybe over 50 other different roles within the hospital that are ancillary and that support overall healthcare, right? And so there are different requirements for those roles, and I kind of wanted to walk through what some of those requirements are. And so as we know, some of what we are more familiar with would require the advanced degrees. So you have physicians, physician assistants, nurses, pharmacists, doctors. We also have professional admin roles that require 4-year degrees and sometimes masters. That's how I got into healthcare. So my first love was psychology. I wanted to get into organizational development, leadership development, human resources. And I just happened to be in healthcare. And I was telling Donnie earlier that you're connected to the patient and being on the front line. So I think it's something I would be in for the remainder of my career. But you have other roles in finance, marketing, communications. We just hired a coordinator for social media. So they're responsible for managing all of our social media posts. There are also other jobs and roles that may require 2 to 2.5 year degree, typically with a certification. So we have medical assistants, which is a combination of admin and clinical tasks to support healthcare workers. There are radiology technicians, so they're responsible for producing X-rays and MRIs and CAT scans and other images to help healthcare workers. Other roles are phlebotomists, pharmacy techs, surgical technologists. And then we have other areas that require a GED or high school degree. And this includes being a licensed security officer, which just requires 8 to 16 hours of training, I believe. We have patient transport roles, environmental services, food services, and physician office assistants. And so just in terms of just takeaways and key points in terms of taking advantage of those opportunities, I think one of the things that I think is most important is, sometimes it takes just getting your foot in the door, right? And it may not be where you want to be in the next 5 or 10 years, but sometimes just starting within the organization will allow you to grow within. I know that we put a lot of programs in place for employees who may start in one area and help them grow and take on new and larger roles. And just in terms of just overall key points, it's a lot of overlap with what Allison shared and Dr. Sterling shared. I would say that it's really important to develop a plan, right? And understanding what jobs are out there, maybe understanding what some of the educational requirements. Before going into healthcare, I thought nurses and doctors, that was the only roles that you can take, that you can have within healthcare. So kind of knowing the industry and knowing what it is that you want to do. Another important key point is developing critical skills, right? And so when you go into a new position or role or looking for a new role, you think about the technical skills. But as Dr. Sterling mentioned, and Allison, there are other soft skills that are really important. So when we're hiring, the technical skills are great, but we're looking for the right fit for the organization as well. And customer service is really important. Dr. Sterling mentioned managing your emotions and emotional intelligence. Working in a team, especially in healthcare, it's seldom that the success of a department or initiative is due to one person. It's all of employees coming from different areas really contributing to that success. Other skills, organization skills, problem solving, and depending on what role you're looking for, presentation skills is also a good one. One thing I think is also important in terms of skill set is computer skills is really important. We are in the age of technology, and everything is on the computer. And I do realize that those who have a strong computer skill set may have an upper hand and may have an advantage in terms of getting some of those roles, and just even becoming more familiar with some of the Microsoft computer programs, Excel, Word, PowerPoint is a good one. And then developing, just other skills to help you get in the door, right? Sometimes that's one of the biggest obstacles is getting an interview or or getting that first position. And so working on some of your resume writing and working on interview skills. I can't tell you how many times I've had interviews and someone was dressed in very casual attire, or it was just a casual style. And I think there's some just basics and foundational skills that we can incorporate there. The courtesy of sending a thank you, how to dress during an interview. And then lastly, I think what's important is building your networks and developing partnerships, right? And I think part of this initiative is to help with that. And that's what I had. That's in brief. That's the end of my time. Again, I want to thank you for allowing me to be a part of this panel, and I really look forward to continuing to be a resource any way that I can.
I tell you what, I think we just hit the trifecta here, boy. Okay, between Sterling and Allison and Dean, we got a lot going on. So what I would like to do at this point is to open it up for questions. You can enter your questions, right, Tom, in the chat?
Absolutely.
Okay, and we will entertain them. In the interim, as the questions are coming through, I just want the panelists to reflect on Mark's remarks earlier in terms of the condition and the state of affairs. So how would, with everything that you three have laid out in your expertise, how would an individual coming out of an incarcerated setting, let's just say they have a misdemeanor or they have, a felony, how would they begin to even negotiate entering the workforce? Allison, why don't you take it?
Do you want to jump in? There's no doubt that it is a challenge for reentry individuals. I would say, one, going back to research, right? There are companies out there that will explicitly say, we are hiring reentry individuals, and they have that as part of their goal, their mission, their hiring strategy. Go there first. Why, there's no point in beating your head into the wall to apply to job after job and just get rejected. So it's best to just go where they're hiring, where that's not going to be an obstacle, right? That's strategy one, right? And then, not that you're looking to, put the cart before the horse, but transparency. One of the biggest mistakes that so many people make is on that little box, which I know we're all trying to ban the box, but they're not straightforward out of the gate. Right. And that is essential because, like I've told my recruiters for years, if someone has a record, after the background check, that's where the conversation starts. It's not where it ends. But if they've lied, that's where the problem becomes.
Right.
So
very good.
That's.
I think the other thing I'd like to add to that is, I personally had the hand of finding employment for more than 50 people with background. And I'm going to say this, right? It's not as big as we make it to be, right? It's not a badge of honor. They don't have to walk around and say, hey, I've been there. You can go through agencies, check the box. Hey, I do have a background, disclose what it is. But guess what? It's not something that the employer gets to know what it is as long as it does not impact the job that they're getting ready to do. So for somewhere, there seems to be some idea in Westchester County, and I used to get jazzed about this, and they would say, well, I can't get a job. And I'm saying, why can't you get a job, right? Look, you can't be an axe murderer and going to work in a daycare, okay? But there's a lot of other jobs out there that you can do. So, you've done your time, whatever your time was. If you've met whatever that is and you've been released, go about your business. Do your research, as Dean talked about. Get yourself prepared. Get your attitude right. You're not behind the wall anymore, right? So there's an expectation when you show up, you're going to assimilate. Get in line. When in Rome, do what the Romans do. Rome. Okay, don't be coming in there, well, you know, I did 28 years. I mean, I hired 5 who did more than 25 years. And 2 of those guys are still working today. They can't get hired on because of the background, but guess what? They've been working for 13 years with the background.
That's fantastic.
Let's just keep it moving, right? Don't make the issue bigger than it has to be.
Sure.
That's it.
Dean, you want to weigh in on that?
Well, I would just echo both what Allison and Dr. Sowing shared. I mean, it's knowing what companies and knowing jobs that you'll have an opportunity to take advantage of. I know that it's a little bit limited in healthcare, and it's something that we're actually trying to overcome and think about and put a strategy in place, because there are a couple of restrictions within healthcare for those who might have a criminal record. So something that we're still trying to work on here.
Very good. In the 2 minutes remaining, Tom, do you have anything in the chat?
Yes, there's a general question about how, a lot of the panelists touched on this, but how do young fathers get exposure to like dynamic professionals like the ones here, and then how do professionals who are providing service to these young fathers kind of start internship programs and like a kind of a two-way dialogue, formal and informal internships and career mentoring?
Okay, we got about a minute to answer that question, guys. So have at it. Shark Tank.
Well, I mean, you want me to try? I can. There are a lot of resources, for internships. There's, whether it's like Business Council Westchester. There's what's the for? Oh my goodness, he's on this call too. The 914. It's like the information phone number that you dial into, but it's not. It's like 411. Remember that?
Right.
But I'm blanking on. But like United Way. A lot of those organizations can match you with people who are doing internships, which is great. I mean, there's unfortunately a lot of legislation that diminished how people can do internships, but I think there are a lot of companies that are looking to do them, but a lot of the not-for-profits can connect you with the employers.
And I think the one thing I want to say on to what Alice is saying, internship doesn't necessarily have to be paid. Now, understanding as a father, you may have ends to meet, but the best way to build your network of people is to exposure. I've always, it's about exposure. So if the exposure means, my daughter says, well, Dad, I can do this internship over here and they're paid. This one is not paid. And I said, well, which one is going to get you to where you're trying to go? Right. So exposure is what it's about. If the internship requires you to say it's a 6-week internship, and then take the 6 weeks non-paid and try to get something that's paid, maybe outside of what you're looking for, to kind of help make ends meet until you can, kind of bridge the next gap. It's all about bridging the next gap. That's it.
Okay. And Dean, in closing, can you just talk about really quickly, and you're unmuted too, can you talk very quickly about the standard issue attire when you're going for an interview? Standard issue for both.
Yeah, I think it depends on your industry and the job that you're going for. In some instances, I think there's some jobs that are remote work, and that's changed a little bit. So I know that when I'm doing interviews virtually, people are a lot more casual. But I think it's really important to, and we say this when we do new hire orientation, is to put your best foot forward. And dress the way, to represent yourself. And so whether it's a tie, a suit, and it's not just about wearing a suit and a tie. One thing that I've noticed is, sometimes it's being neat and neat and clean, and how you present yourself. So not just what you wear, but how you wear it is really important, because it says a lot. And Allison mentioned earlier that you sometimes you only get one shot at a first impression, and so you do that by what you say and how you present yourself.
Excellent. Excellent.
There's a question that's in the chat. I think it's very important. If we can find 13 seconds for this one, could someone comment on how a father might engage with their children when it comes to their child's career? I think that's important. I mean, we can end on that maybe.
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah. Allison, you want? I can take that if you'd like. Right.
Hey, you're a dad. You go.
Okay. So you know, when I've gone down to speak at at universities where there are parents, I used to be the director of retention and development for LIU in Brooklyn. And when the parents would say, Dr. Jasper, how do I help influence my child to do blah? Which is the worst thing you can do, right? You're not going to influence your child to do blah, right? You can have a conversation with your children, with your child, and ask them things. What are you inspired by? What gets you up? What is the things that what are you curious about learning? Right? Expose them to things that pique their curiosity. Let them go out there again. Back to that word exposure, right? Expose, and let them find their way. Once they start showing up, they constantly say, "Well, I really want to do this." Then we can help as parents to facilitate a path in that direction, whether it's through an internship, whether it's through a mentor advisor, whether it's through a university academic setting, whatever will give them the best opportunity for them to say, "Oh, I like this," or "I don't like this, but I like this aspect of that more than I like, I may like accounting, but I want to do forensics accounting," right? Until they kind of get exposure to that, well, they will never know. Right. So we're not trying to influence them to follow mom and dad's footprints. We want them to find out on their own what they're particularly interested in and help them to, kind of create pathways into that particular area. And you do that through internships. You do that through at your university levels. Sophomores and juniors should be doing that. At your senior year, if you're only then having a conversation about what you really want to do, it's too late.
Appreciate that insight.
Absolutely.
So thank you one and all for your contributions. This is going to resonate far beyond just this time that we're meeting together. So I'd like to now introduce Barbara Andrews, who will take us into session 2. Barbara?
So Dr. Go ahead, Dr.
Yeah, I'm sorry about my mute button. Thank you so much, Professor Simmons, Donnie, and a wonderful panel. Really terrific information. So thank you, Allison Madison, Dr. Jasper, Dean Akbar, and hopefully at some point in the future, we will hear from Anthony Miller. I'm sorry that we could not connect today. So we have a brief change of pace right now while we're getting ready for the next session. And we're going to play a public service announcement from the National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse. The National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse is an online vehicle. They have lots of great information on a wide range of topics for both dads and providers who work with fathers. So I'm going to call on Tom Kelly now to start the PSA. And if at any point interested in getting more information, the web address is www.fatherhood.gov, and I will put that in the chat box. Take it away, Tom.
Okay. Let's see if we can do this.
The thing that drives me every day is him. His real name is Darion, and we call him Day for short. Every day he's hungry for something, whether it's affection, attention, knowledge, and there's this huge responsibility in making sure that when he's no longer under my wing, that he's a good person. I think the advice I would give is you don't need to know all the answers. The craziest thing was believing that your dad knew everything. So as a dad, you felt like you had to know everything. You had to get everything right. It's okay to make mistakes. Just do it from the right place. As long as it's coming from love, then, you know, it kind of starts to work itself out. I want him to be able to sit back one day and go, we worked together, we did a good job. I'll say my kid's pretty dope. The thing that drives me every day as a dad is
Thanks so much, Tom. And the whole theme of that particular campaign is dedication, which is a play on words, because to be a good dad, it takes dedication. So that whole campaign is talking dedication. It's my great pleasure now to introduce the next moderator, Reverend Erwin Trollinger. Reverend Trollinger is the pastor of Calvary Baptist Church in White Plains, New York. He's also a longtime member of the New York Fathering Conference. He's been a presenter and a member of the planning committee for many, many years. And take it away, Reverend Trollinger.
Good evening, everyone. We thank you for remaining with us for this next portion of the conference. The next portion of this conference is going to be dealing with fathering through the pandemic. Here's the issue. During the pandemic, many fathers have lost their jobs and have experienced emotional, mental, and physical impacts. Some of the fathers have been unable to engage with their children, and the stress of COVID has created tension even in their home lives. It is our intent tonight to share how fathers play an essential role in the healthy development of their children, their family, and our community. This session will explore how we can maintain healthy fathers by providing resources to help them in the midst of this pandemic. We have three notable gentlemen that are going to share with us on tonight. Our first presenter will be Shamari Akil. Shamari Akil holds a position of the Borough-wide Director of Restorative Practices, Offices of Safety and Youth Development. He is responsible and oversees the area of restorative practices and expansion in several districts in South Queens and South Brooklyn. His work encompasses outreach and training for senior leadership membership of the Department of Education, which includes the executive superintendents and their teams, as well as principals and assistant principals as well. He works closely with the Office of Equity and Access to support the principals with tangible strategies to address the disproportionate data related to school discipline, grading policies, honors, AP courses, selections and processes, and school-wide attendance. Brother Shamari Akil was once the house principal at New Rochelle High School, and he also was a principal at the New York City Department of Education in Queens Academy High School in Jamaica, Queens. He has an extensive resume, but I'm going to let him introduce himself by his presentation. At this time, my brother, Shamari B. Akil.
Hey, thank you, Reverend Trollinger. Good evening to all the current speakers, guests, panelists, and those who are simply here to listen and learn. I want to thank you all for allowing me to share my experiences with you tonight. I'm not here as an expert, but I'm here as a member of the larger community, an educator, a father, and someone who wants to share and learn so that we can move our young people and our fathers forward. Tonight, I'm going to be speaking about 3 or 4 basic things. One is what it means to be a father during the age of COVID-19, this pandemic, what it means to be an educator during the pandemic. I'm going to share with you some data around, not a lot, but I think it's important to understand some data around the concept of learning loss and what it means, and not just academic learning, but social emotional learning and development as well. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of my own experiences around COVID and what I've learned, and then talk somewhat about some of the silver linings that have come from this pandemic, if we can actually believe that there are some silver linings. And then I want to end with a discussion on some career choices for young people. And as the question was posed earlier, what or how do fathers play a role in directing young people and our children in their future careers? I think it's important that we talk a little bit about some of the careers that are going to be necessary in our communities in the next decade or so. And so with that, let me begin. I do want to correct something. When I sent this, when I sent my bio in, it was before I made another career choice. And so although I'm still with the Department of Education, I had an opportunity to do some work with some young people over the summer, and it made me realize how much I miss being in a school. So I actually went back into a school in September as an administrator. So I still have all those other things under my belt, but I am an administrator in a high school as of September 6th, that recently. So I apologize for not having a most recent updated bio for you guys. But anyway, so let me begin. I want to stress the significance of understanding how COVID has impacted the world, and not just through the job force, but through education and what we call learning loss. And learning loss is simply is described as the gap between where students were prior to the pandemic, academically and intellectually, and where we find students now after a year and a half of remote learning. And I want to begin by sharing this little passage from an article written in the New York Times in this past July. And I want to start here. It says, for example, in math, Latino third graders performed 17% points lower in spring 2021 compared with the typical achievement of Latino third graders in the spring of 2019. The decline was 15 percentile points for Black students compared with similar students in the past, and 14 for Native Americans, according to the NWEA report. Now, the NWEA is a not-for-profit research organization called the Northwest Evaluation Association. And their purpose primarily is to do research on phenomena around the world. Asian and white students also underachieved compared with the performance of similar students in 2019, but the impact was less severe at 9 percentile points each. The report used data from about 5.5 million public school students in 3rd through 8th grade who took the NWEA's test during the 2021 school year and compared their performance to similar students in 2019. So the interesting thing about this study is that there was a similar one done in the Netherlands, a pretty homogeneous group of people. And what we learned, or what was learned from that study, was that the learning loss tended to be the same. So here we have it, that this particular pandemic has created a vacuum of learning for our people. That's something I don't think anyone was ever prepared to ever think about and deal with. And as that old saying goes, when America catches a cold, people of color catch the flu. So our people, or people of color, or young people of color, have lost at least a year and a half to 2 years worth of learning during this pandemic. Now that is significant in many ways. It's significant in developing and achieving academic success for the future. But one of the things that we also learn is that there's a significant gap in the emotional and social development of our young people as well. And that is even more significant because what we're finding is that our young people who have not been able to be social, and let's face it, much of learning is social. Yes, we learn through reading, yes, we learn through writing, but much of what we learn is also social. And that is why some of the best teachers are those teachers who understand the need to be socially connected to their students. Now you remove those factors, you remove those supports from students, and you really create a situation where students have to somewhat learn on their own, make mistakes on their own, and not really receive the kind of support and encouragement and backing that they would normally have in school. And you've opened, now we have a situation where young people are not aware of their actions, not aware of the consequences that come with decisions, and are really, really at a loss. We're finding that some of the major infractions in schools are no longer those that carry major consequences, but there are certain things that really fall under the category of immaturity. And that is because students have been out of a structured setting for almost 2 years. That is significant. What do we do about it? I think the first thing we have to do as young fathers or fathers in general is understand what our young people have missed and what they need. One of the things that they need from us as fathers is an ear to listen. And sometimes that is all. But they need support. They need us to be involved in their education. They need us to be focused on helping them develop. And in some cases, help secure certain services for them that will help them be successful. I'll share this with you. I am a father of 3. I have 3 girls, and they span the gauntlet or spectrum of not only social ability, but intellectual capability as well. My youngest is 17, and she has severe social, emotional, and physical delays. My older 2 are high achieving. And so I am somewhat, you know, that statement that there's no one child that is alike, even though they may come from the same background. Well, that is so very true. All 3 of my daughters throughout the pandemic have needed different things from me. My oldest, and I'll share this with you, graduated from Temple University at the height of the pandemic. But Temple decided that they were not going to have a graduation celebration. And so she was distraught, she was depressed, because she had worked so hard over the last 4.5 years. And now when it comes time to be recognized and to graduate, there was no graduation for them. So the family got together and did something very simple. We purchased some wood and we built a stage in the backyard to allow her to have that experience, even if it was just with us in the backyard. But it is something that I share with you because we have to learn to dig deep within ourselves and be creative, and to rely on what we feel at the moment sometimes just to get through this pandemic. And just by providing that opportunity for my daughter to walk across a stage that we made in the backyard with her cap and gown on, made all the difference. It kind of helped her emerge out of that minor depression that she was going through. My second daughter graduated this past May during the pandemic from the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. However, the month before she graduated, she was diagnosed with COVID, and she had a severe case of it. Now, the school would not allow me to go there to visit. They would not allow us to be there because of all the COVID protocols. But I had secured, and my daughter had secured, a solid foundational relationship with the dean of the business department. And so because of that relationship, the dean of the business department would deliver food to my daughter every day. She would go to the pharmacy and bring my daughter medicine whenever she needed. And so this was not part of her job, but it was through developing relationships. It was through me making sure that I was constantly involved, that the school officials knew who I was and knew that this was my child, that we believe, we were able to make sure that she was looked after while she was there. And so even in choosing a school that would be supportive of students throughout any type of crisis was important in making sure that we chose the right school for her. And so again, as fathers, it becomes extremely important for us to be connected to every aspect of our children's lives, even if they don't live with us, even if they're living with another parent. We must make sure that we are constantly involved and constantly there for them, even more so during this time of COVID. Now, my youngest is 17. And again, major significant social and emotional delays from birth. She was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes around the age of 14. And if you know anything about COVID, it has a negative effect on the human body, but more so if you have diabetes. So making sure that I learned as much as I could about this disease, making sure I learned as much as I could about how it affects people with diabetes and other ailments was important, because I wanted to make sure that I and my family did not do anything that would bring that particular disease to her. So as fathers, I encourage you to be connected and stay involved even more so in your child's life. So we have this wonderful thing called technology now. We have Zoom, and we're able to see the faces of our loved ones while they are away. I say use it. Use your phones. Make sure that they see you. Make sure that they hear your voice daily, sometimes twice a day if you can. But do not do not ignore the power of paper and pen. Going back to writing letters allowed me to say things and express things to them that I would not normally do through Zoom or through text messages. But being able to sit quietly and write a letter sometimes allowed me to be expressive in a way that drew me closer to my daughters and them me. So as fathers who are going through this pandemic, make sure that you are supporting your child, not just financially or emotionally and spiritually, but also academically. Make sure you're aware of the COVID protocols at different schools and different school districts. They're all somewhat different, but make sure you understand that it's important that teachers are vaccinated, that the people who are around them are vaccinated, and that your children are getting the best care possible. Two other points I want to make around fathering through this era of COVID. There is a silver lining. And one of the silver linings we found, specifically in education, is that those young people who suffer from social phobias and anxiety tended to do better while their peers did worse. And why is that? Because without having the stress and anxiety of being in a classroom of people or being in crowded hallways, this particular small group of individuals progressed better, or progressed more. And it was a very interesting thing because while their peers were suffering academically, this particular group was able to study on their own and make significant academic improvement. So please know the needs of your children, know the needs of your young people. Another silver lining, young people have become extremely more technology savvy. And it has actually forced me and my peers to actually step up our game when it comes to technology. All of the social platforms that are out there, all of the electronic platforms that are out there, we now know can serve a greater use than just Facebook or Instagram, but giving our young people access to professors, to teachers who are not necessarily in their area, but who may be across the world, providing opportunities for young people to learn while in a virtual classroom with a virtual classroom in another country. These are all things that we can do now that we never really thought about before. But this pandemic has opened up that particular avenue for us. In my school right now, one of the things that we are doing is we are looking at what teachers in other schools are offering specific courses that we may not be offering in our schools to give kids additional credits. So there is a silver lining that we can use through this pandemic. And I encourage fathers, when you talk with your teachers, when you talk with your child's school officials, ask them about these things. Talk to them about how they are getting that learning loss gap to be decreased for your son or for your daughter. The last thing I'll talk about is the need to put pressure as fathers on our local officials to make sure that we have our young people have access to free Wi-Fi and to better broadband services so that they can in fact decrease this learning gap by having access to free Wi-Fi and internet so that they can learn. That is important. It's important for us to make sure that we support those candidates who are going to be there for our young people in their futures. One of the things that I heard earlier from, I think it was Mr. Akbar, when they was asked the question about how can fathers be supportive of their children when looking at future careers. It is no doubt in my mind that STEM and math and sciences will play a major role in the next couple of centuries coming up. However, it is clear to us that our young people are also in need of social services. So I would encourage us to gear and steer young people to the clinical fields of psychology, of therapy, of social work. We need people who look like us to care for those who look like us and who know the specific cultural nuances that our people go through. It is no secret that in the African-American community or communities of color, therapy is not looked at as something that is good. There is a social stigma that comes with it that we must erase. And one of the ways we do that is by making sure that we are in these fields helping people not only overcome the stigma, but helping people understand the need to go into these particular fields. Now more than ever, we need people to help support people through this time. I talked to a parent the other day, and she was concerned about her son. And she told me, she said, Mr. Akil, I've been looking for a therapist for my son. I just can't find one right now who's taking more patients. This is an area that is not only going to be something that our community needs, but it's also going to be an area that will be lucrative and at the same time provide an opportunity to give back to our communities. So again, I'll just say this in closing. It's important as fathers that we understand and be aware of the learning loss that has occurred over the past 2 years, the significance for the future of our young people because of it, what we need to do as fathers to support our children through it. And last, but certainly not least, providing opportunities for our young people to understand the significance, importance of going into fields that will support and help our communities in the future. I thank you all.
Thank you, Brother Matt. Thank you, Brother Shamari. We appreciate it 1000%. As we continue to move forward to answer the question of how is the father in this pandemic, we invite Brother Matthew Smith, currently as Executive Manager and Director, Head of the Digital Banking and Banking as Services for Starling Bank, National Bank. Starling Bank is the 6th largest regional bank in New York City area in the term of deposits and holdings, 30 billion in assets. That's a whole lot of money, y'all. In his current role, Matthew is responsible for all direct to the consumers and direct to business clients, acquisitions and channels, banking as a service strategy, partnership, and overall digital strategy across the company. Prior to Matthew joining Sterling, Matthew held senior management position at Bridgewater Associates, GE Capital, across multiple functions, including finances, IT, data management, operations. Matthew was the finance leader for the project team that developed and launched GE's first online support platform that took in 3 million of consumers' deposits volume within 6 months of the launch. Matthew lives in Norwalk. We won't hold that against him, but he does have a wife and 3 children. And so, Matt, come on, and we still got houses here in Westchester that you can move back to.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say I'm a New Rochelle guy, right? I grew up in New Rochelle, and I technically still am a member of Bethel Baptist Church in White Plains. It's been challenging to get down there, but I consider that home. So that's my family, and shout out to my friends and family at Bethel. Appreciate the time. And I won't, I might take a slightly different approach to talking about some of these things. I think what's interesting is as I'm listening to like the themes around the various different speakers, what calls out to me the most is the importance of just being there and being a father, right? And I think first and foremost, one of the things that has been the most influential thing on my life is the fact that I had a dad who was around and that was there to teach me things, right? And show me the right way to move. And one of the most important things that I think he ever taught me, and one of the most important things that I think he ever said to me was actually that he literally had no clue how to manage finances. And I thought that was a very profound statement from a person who I idolized, that not only could he reflect on himself and be vulnerable in front of his son and say, this is a thing that I don't know, but he recognized the importance of expressing to me that not only does he not know it and that I need to work hard to figure this out with him, but more so that I should not follow in any of his examples in terms of how to manage finances on a go forward, which I always thought was interesting, and we would laugh about that later in life. And I say this, that example, because I think it's important, right? Like as a father, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know, right? And I think understanding what you don't know is one of the most important things in life, because even more so than the things that you're good at or the things that you know, to be able to understand your weaknesses gives you a powerful tool to be able to combat against those things, right? You can create plans, right? If you have a lack of ability in a specific area, you can work to overcome that. If you have a lack of skills, you can work to gain those skills. And so I always took that to heart, and that's kind of how I've approached a lot of things with regards to parenting. When I think about the pandemic, one of the things that I think was most powerful for me about that was this concept of time, right? Like I spend a lot of time outside of the house working, and then to be, kind of home more, it kind of made me realize that there were some things that I could be doing differently, that I was hoping to share with the group here. And the biggest of which was starting to implement what we refer to as financial literacy class at my house, right? So I have 3 kids. My oldest son is 10, my daughter's 7, and I have a 6-month-old, which is a blessing as part of COVID. And what we do is we sit together multiple times per week, and we have very structured conversations about financial literacy. And one of the things that I think is important that I would, kind of suggest to everyone is there are a lot of very interesting tools that are available where you can infuse technology into these discussions, right? So as an example, in my role, I do a lot of fintech partnerships. Fintech stands for financial technology companies. And through that, I've been introduced to a lot of very interesting companies, Greenlight being one that I favor the most is this company called Goalsetter. Goalsetter has an app that is targeted towards building financial literacy for youth. And you can download this app. You can open a FDIC insured deposit account, and you can teach your kids at the same time all about investing and savings. You can buy stocks through their app for your children. And it's in their name, and it's also built with an educational component that allows them to learn more about the overall concept of financial literacy. And so what my children and I have done is we use the app. I project it on the TV screen, and we go through class, right? When we talk about what do these things mean, right? What's margin? How do we think about interest on accounts, right? What's entrepreneurship, right? How do you go about managing things like taxes and other components that are essential to building wealth, right? What's a stock, right? And how do you invest in a stock? All these things are part of the quizzes that are available as part of the application process, right? So you can set it up so that way your kids have the opportunity to make, a couple dollars. I pay my kids about 5 cents or 20 cents, I can't remember, for each question that they get right. And they take it really personal and they challenge each other. But what I thought has been very interesting as a result of this is not only do they want to do the class, they want to learn more, and they want to apply these things to real life, right? So you fast forward to, this summer, I come home from work and they're out in the front with a lemonade stand, right? And then the next week they're out in front with, selling comic books that, my son hand drew, right? Or they had all these extra toys and they're outside trying to sell these toys. And I thought it was so interesting. And as I'm kind of talking to them, I'm like, okay, well, what did you do today? And they're like, well, we sold these toys. It was $1. I know this toy, cost 50 cents. That means I've got 50-cent margin. I'm like, that's really great, right? Like the fact that you guys are connecting to that at such a young age. And I think what's really nice about that is it piques their curiosity. It starts to build a foundation. And in the interim, right, I think as they get older, that curiosity will just grow and will continue for them to be able to go out and kind of build wealth for themselves, right? And so once we started doing that, now we've gotten into more mature conversations. And it's interesting that they kind of put a business lens onto pretty much everything that we do, right? So I'm like, as an example, I buy a lot of sneakers, which is a really bad habit to have, because they're a appreciating asset, right? They depreciate as soon as you put them on your feet. But what's interesting is my kids understand that, right? What's an appreciating asset? What's a depreciating asset? And how do you go about making the right investments for things? And so what's interesting is, I'll buy a pair of sneakers and my daughter will come up and go, okay, if you sold those sneakers, how much could you make, right, in the secondary market? She's 7 years old, right? And these are the discussions that we're having. And I think that that's really, really cool, right? And so a lot of what you could do is starting to lay those foundations, right? And again, getting into more mature concepts, right? I think there's a couple of things that I've been starting to push to them that I'll express to you all as maybe a foundation for you to start to set with your children as well, because I've seen some success firsthand with this, right? One is, outside of the financial literacy piece, which again, I think I saw some questions come up. Greenlight is a really good one. If you have younger kids, I would probably suggest Goal Setter, both of which are available in the App Store. I know the owners of both companies. Goal Setter is actually Black owned and it's a female owned company. So that's a nice piece if you want to support a Black owned business. That's a great company to support. But outside of the financial literacy pieces, I think there's other things that kind of round out individuals that you can start at a young age, right? One is building a skill set, right? So linking it back to my father, he always told me, if you're good with your hands, or if you can kind of develop some sort of a skill, not only will you save money, but you'll also never be broke, right? Because you can, in the worst of environments, you can go out and use that skill to earn a living. In the best of environments, you can use that skill to save yourself from having to hire somebody else to do those skills, right? And so one of the things I've always been really big on is teaching my kids how to build, right? How to, do home improvements. We do a lot around plumbing, we do a lot around electrical, teaching them the importance of understanding those skill sets. But that could be applied to anything, right? I mean, you could go down any path, HVAC, any type of trade. I think it's always good for a person to have some sort of a background like that in order to round out a skill set. The second thing is venturing into business, right? So most individuals who are wealthy tend to not build wealth through working for someone else, but by working for themselves, right? And so one of the things I've been trying to do is, even though they see me as an individual who is working for an institution, I do a lot of side businesses. I've got a lot of investments, right? And I try and teach them the importance of being financially independent and being able to diversify your income streams, so that way you're able to, be self-sufficient in any type of economic environment, right? If you think about the pandemic, linking this back, what I did was when the market crashed, when the stock market crashed, I called my kids into the room and I said, okay, take a look at what happened, right? Everything is down now, right? All stocks are down, people losing money. And I was like, so what do you think we should do? And they're just like, well, if you're losing money, should you take money out? And I'm like, no, actually the opposite. We should be putting money in, right? This is how markets work, right? When markets go down, the only logical place for them is to go back up, right? So what we did was we took all the money that they had been saving and a chunk of money that I also had put into that, and we put it into the market, into various different stocks. And we talked about why we were picking different stocks and how that links to, different triggers within the economy. That portfolio that we put together really quick, that one, I forgot that week in April, I think is now 150 to 200% return on that portfolio, right? So they look at that and they're like, wow, that's amazing. That's an important teaching moment, right? And I think, making sure that you kind of recognize when you've got opportunities like that are really important, because not only can you take advantage of it, but you can make it come to life for them, so that way they'll always remember that as an event, right? That was a thing that happened, and they'll always remember that for the future. Another thing I think that's really important is creating a budget and learning how to save, right? budgets are time consuming, and therefore people don't do it, especially if you're at a place where you're not worried about, managing cash flow. I find that, that's the least amount of time where you're going to invest time in a budget. Why I think budgets are important is because it enables you to set very clear goals for yourself in the beginning of the year and then manage to those goals, right? If you want to go on vacation, then you have to save for that. If you want a bike, you have to save for that. If you want a car, you have to save for that. So again, linking it back to the app that I talked about in Goal Setter, it has a savings module, right? Where my kids can go, hey, I want a new bike, right? And I go, okay, the bike costs, $300. And what they can do is as they earn money through allowance, and this also allows you to pay them through allowance and set up chores and things of that nature for them. But it gives them an opportunity to be able to understand what it takes to save for a goal, right? And I think that's really important. Most people, when I tell them what I do, even like very good friends of mine, it's interesting, because I've launched 2 online banks before. And so my friends will go, okay, I'll do it. But like, what's a savings account or what's a checking account? Like, what's the difference between these things? And I'm like, dude, we're almost 40 years old, right? Like, this is not a good thing for us that we're having this level of discussion, right? Like, we need to definitely empower ourselves and then empower our children to understand what financial tools are available to them, savings accounts, checking accounts, IRAs, right, and investment funds, stocks, bonds, etc., and give them that knowledge so that way they understand how to save and accumulate wealth over time, right? So I think that's a really big component of things too. The last thing I would say, that I think is important and sometimes gets overlooked is this concept of credit and debt. I think what's interesting in my line of work, I look a lot in terms of trends, and what people are doing. And what I'm finding is that there is a huge misconception, especially amongst millennials and young adults, around using a credit card or using some sort of a credit product, right? Which is why now you're seeing a lot of like buy now, pay later, point of purchase type of things. And in fact, if you think about it, a credit card is actually the most important and most beneficial financial tool that anybody can have. It's also a way to get yourself in trouble if you don't know how to use it. But if you're using it properly, it is actually one of the best tools that you can possibly use to build up not only your credit, but also to manage cash flow and leverage that float in order to be able to invest in other things. And so I say this as a way of kind of promoting the healthy use of credit amongst younger people. As an example, I have my son linked to 2 of my credit cards, right? So he's actually building credit as a 10-year-old, right? By the time he's 18, he'll have an 800 plus credit score without ever having done anything, right? And that's a thing that I'll replicate for my daughter. That's the thing I'll replicate for my 3rd son. I think that is hugely important. When you have credit, it enables you and it unlocks so many doors for you to be able to do other things, get a mortgage, right, at a better rate, right? Buy a car at a better rate, right? Do these things for yourself. And so what's interesting is I find that as I talk to younger folks, there's this stigma around like, not have to use a debit card or I want to pay cash for everything. Awful idea, right? You should be leveraging credit to the extent that you can build your own credit profile and at the same time figure out ways that you can exploit the financial system to pay for the investments that you have, right? If you look at a lot of wealthy individuals, they have the money to be able to invest in whatever they want. They typically tend to use the bank's money, right, to make strategic investments and then profit off of those. And the reason why is because it's a lot less risky, and they have access to more capital, right? And that's how the game is played, right? So I think a lot of what we need to be teaching our kids is centered around these constructs of understanding the financial literacy, leveraging debt and credit in a positive way, infusing technology into these discussions, and then the importance of saving and budgeting, right? And I hope that these examples that I've given where I found success, again, as a father doing these things with my kids, will provide some clarity and hopefully, you know, might spark some ideas within the folks on the phone, where you could leverage some of that in your own households as well. So hopefully that was helpful.
Not hearing you.
You're on mute, Reverend Trollinger.
Everything I said was real good. Everything I said was real good. It really was. You're great. You're fantastic. You redeemed yourself. We got some houses in White Plains that you can come back and move into, okay? And Pastor Williamson will be happy to have your family right in church every Sunday, okay? Now, the icing on the cake, speaking about preachers. Reginald L. Cox, founder and director of Fatherhood Connection. He is a husband, a father, a servant, a parent educator, a disciple, and an apostolic gift to the body of Christ. Reggie Cox believes that everyone is in a recovery from something, and his vision is to establish, model the restoration of fathers, family, and communities according to the original intent. Reggie works with men, youth, and women to help them identify, enhance, activate their internal purposes and their gifts. Reggie currently is the pastor at Church of the Love Faith Center in Rochester, New York, and was the senior pastor of the Changing Lives Worship Center for over 9 years. He is also the founder and executive director of Fatherhood Connections and has been conducting men's groups for over 20 years. His Boys to Men group provide mentoring, life skills, personal development to young adults between the ages of 13 through 21, whose fathers are not present or involved within those young people's lives. The Fatherhood Connection contracts with the state and local social services departments throughout Western New York, including Monroe County, to offer fatherhood education for caseworkers, child protective services, prevention programs, foster care workers, and community members. And most importantly, he is a member of our committee, and he has charged and electrified us. So go ahead, my brother, do what that Azusia in you supposed to do. It's in your hands.
Well, thank you, Reverend Trollinger. We really are excited and we're honored to be not only with you, but the rest of everybody on the Zoom today. We are going to really talk about the measure of fatherhood. This is our goal and our objective. We're going to try and do it within the time frame so that everyone else can really still have Q&A if needed afterwards. But as we talk about the measure of fatherhood, we also understand the greatest social detriment to any nation, community, and family is fatherlessness. And so one of the things right off the bat, we want to be able to look at how fatherlessness really has impacted our nation. So when we look at this, right, I'm trying to get my slides together here. When we look at this, we see the measure. When we talk about the measure, we're talking about the metron. Many of the times being stretched out, I understand that there's an influence and an inspiring and an advancement. In other words, sometimes my greatest growth and development begins with me being stretched, taking myself out of comfort zones and taking myself out of the traditional role. When we talk about the measure of fatherhood, when we think about all of the treasure and the honor that guides have already shared on tonight, we realize that we're being stretched. We're really going beyond the paradigms of comfort and now moving into a realm that yet being able to be creative and to expose. I love what, I think it was Shamari's talking about exposure, right? When we have healthy exposure, right, the sky's the limit. We can do all things there. So when we look at the whole conference, and I love the topic from Frank and the team about restart, refocus, and renew. not only do we lead the nation in fatherlessness, right, but we touch into 6 areas. Now, I'm not going to read everything because I have many PowerPoints here, and I think I probably have more than what I need. But we talk about the poverty, the crime, the education, substance abuse, physical and emotional well-being or wellness, and teen pregnancy. If we are to address fatherlessness, there must be a systemic outlook for those who present a readiness across systems. And we're going to talk about what those systems look like, right? So we're excited that the New York State Council of Children and Families is leading the charge, in a sense, to identify and strengthen fatherhood across New York State. They have selected me in my role to be able to bring the 10 economic regions together so that we can really impact fatherhood, fatherlessness, and to address those champions in each of the 10 regions. I'm not going to talk about all of the 4 areas, but these 4 areas are really primed to really to look at how do we build a fatherhood culture? How do we establish a community? How do fathers come together similar to what we're doing right now so that we can be edified, that we can be empowered, that we can be encouraged? So we talk about leadership, my attitudes, beliefs, and values. I'm a father of 10 children, 5 boys and 5 girls, and I got 18 grandchildren, right? And 1 on the way, right? But my attitude and my beliefs, my values, I'm a better father today than I was 42 years ago, right? Yeah. My oldest son, he didn't get the best of me. But since now I've matured, right? In the Greek, the word perfect means mature. I've matured to some degree to the point where now I'm able to be intentional with my leadership. I'm able to look at organizations, the policies, things that not only agencies need to look at, but our traditions need to be looked at. For example, I need to look at the fact that if alcoholism ran very vivid in our families, right, in our family of origin, from my father being an alcoholic, his father being an alcoholic, right, how do we break the pattern? How do we break that cycle? Well, we definitely cannot do it, right, if we're bringing our every holiday, we're bringing the alcohol and the addictions and all that stuff right there to those festivities, right? We're training, right? We're training the young people, our children and our grandchildren, that it's acceptable and it's the norm to be able to drink, you know, the way we drink, get drunk, or use a different addiction issues. And so we have to be able to look at breaking some of those cycles. We have to speak to that and have a voice to that. We have to be able to engage. I don't know about you, but I'm really learning how to be more effective as an engagement person, being able to occupy the interests of others, yet to be able to come together and be able to see the treasure in other people. And then the outreach piece, the community development. How well are we at really being able to connect? Someone else talked earlier about social, right? A lot of the learning is social, right? We have to look at then the cultures. The culture is really addressing, I call it the 7 mountains. So in arts and craft, right, we have to address that. The business, I'm an entrepreneur, and I believe that there's an entrepreneur in all of us, right? We just have to tap into that. We have to believe where the purpose and that passion reside, because I was designed to solve a problem. And if I was saying it inside of a group, we would just repeat after me that we were designed to solve a problem. We were created, you know, fearfully and wonderfully made. And so there is no other you. Not only is there no other footprint or fingerprint, but there is no other assignment like you have. So in each of these 7 areas, education, family, government, media, religion, many of us are able to tap into some of these cultures that we've been designed and cause an assignment to address. In other words, Reggie, in the business area, right? I think I'm well, but I think I need Matthew and some other guys, right? to work with me, man, to keep me tweaked and tight. But also in the area of government, I work with the county, the local Department of Social Services in all of the 8 counties that we're in. And now we're trying to tap into every local county across New York State. So these are 2 or 3 areas that I really feel that there's an anointing, there's a grace, there's a favor, there's a measure in those areas. What's the area that you reside in? So for those that have already spoken, we can kind of hear their passion and hear the culture in which they're to impact. I'm not going to read all of the mission, but I will tap into the vision to educate, to engage, and to empower fatherhood connections in our spheres of influence. In other words, for me, what I'm working with is the 10 economic regions across New York State. So with that, it starts with our family. It starts beyond our family, but in our community, at the workplace, right? Are we created to bond? I think so. The oldest institution in the world is family, right? We talk often about the boy, the man, and the patriarch. We say that the goal of the male is to become a patriarch. Each male will have to confront his boy. I don't know about you all, but I got a boy on the inside of me, and he's a 2-year-old toddler, and when his needs are not met, he will spaz, right? So I have to manage that little boy, right? Because he will cause me, Frank, he will cause me to repeat myself, and I don't know about anybody else, but I can't keep on affording to repeat myself, Shabari, right? So I got to make it happen. I have to manage that boy. Watch this. I have to snitch on the boy. Come on, y'all, work with me for a minute. If we don't snitch on that boy, right, he will cause us to repeat ourselves over and over and over again. The man has to do with his responsibilities and be held accountable, right? We talk about the 2 areas of work. We'll hit that in the next slide, but there's an internal work and there is an external work. The patriarch leaves a legacy to those in his spheres of influence. A patriarch is a man who's taking responsibility for establishing maturity for himself and his extended family. The patriarch is the ultimate goal of the male because he's not a retired grandfather who is set in his ways, but he's a man working on setting, here it is, a legacy, right? Leading in a way that empowers those around him and challenges himself and all those in his sphere of influence. I often say in this area that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I have to remember that no matter how old I get or how great I am or how gifted I become, I still have to be the student. Come on, y'all, work with me for a minute, right? I'd never stop being the student. In fact, the young people will teach me how to engage them. If I'm discerning enough, I'll pick up what motivates them, what passion, what giftedness that they have on the inside. So we were talking earlier about the work and work being 2 separate distinctions, right? The internal work, the word work in the Greek really means avoda. Avoda means to discover oneself. This is that internal work, especially if we haven't had a progenitor or a model or a healthy father figure who's also working in himself to discover his own identity. If he's not been there, in many of the cases, our fathers haven't been there, now I'm left on my own to be able to find out my identity, find out who I am, find out my purpose, find out my assignment. So many of the times through the exposure, as it was mentioned earlier, that's how I found out and tapped in to what I'm doing today. There was another gentleman that came along my path and he did what he did and I saw it. When I saw what he was doing, this is now the area that I picked up and started running with it. And it's opened up the door and given me access, understanding a measure of grace that has walked upon me. I want to turn real quickly right now to this video. I want to stop the screen here and hit this video because I think it really speaks to the fact that as a father, these are some of the things that we want to do. And I'm trying to find it, Tom, I'm looking for it. Where is it at? There it is. Okay. So let's get ready to show this here, right? And it really talks about fathers picking them up, picking your child up, picking up people in your sphere of influence up. Let us go here for a minute. Hopefully I have my volume up pretty good. And let's watch it. It's about 4 minutes.
Was over. I got offered a job to become a hospital administrator. 2-year program, $75,000 job. And right before I took the job, my daddy called me on the phone. Let me tell you about my daddy. When I was a little boy, my daddy would always pick me up. When he came home from work, he picked me up. When he saw me in the nursery after church, he picked me up. No matter how long long he worked, no matter how tired he was, my daddy would always pick me up. So when I had my kids, I would always pick up my kids. When I got home, sometimes I was tired. They have a bottle in one hand and they just lifted up the other hand and they knew what daddy was supposed to do. My job was to pick them up. Let me help you out, Advocare. This is a spiritual interaction. When you pick up a child, it is a spiritual transaction. When you pick up a child, you change their perspective. When you pick up a child, all of a sudden they can see the world the way you see it. I don't care what your children have done, there is nothing they can do for you to stop picking them up. Well, my daughter's a drug addict. I don't care, pick her up. My son messes up. I don't care, pick him up. I don't care. That is your job, mama. That is your job, daddy. That is your job, grandma. That is your job, granddad. Your number one job is to pick them up and change their perspective. My saddest day, one day, my daddy looked at me and said, boy, you too big. I can't pick you up anymore. But when he couldn't pick me up physically, he would pick me up emotionally. He would pick me up spiritually. I had a great dad because he would always pick me up. He would always change my perspective. So my daddy called me on the phone and asked me a question. He said, son, you had a tough year. What's next? I said, Dad, I'm going to be a hospital administrator. He said, not bad, but let me ask you a question, son. Do you believe you're an NBA player? I said, Coach, what do I need to do to play in the NBA? He said, do two things you can play in the NBA. Lose 20 pounds and shoot a three-point shot with range, you can play in the NBA. I think you should be a motivational speaker, son, but if you lose 20 pounds and shoot a three-point shot with range, you can play in the NBA. I lost 20 pounds, and every day I would shoot 500 shots a day, every single day. I got invited to training camp with the Dallas Mavericks, and not only did I make the team, I became the first ever undrafted rookie free agent in the history of the Dallas Mavericks to start opening night. I had not started a basketball game since high school. I got to the arena and they dimmed the lights and they put the spotlight right on me. Right through the spotlight, I saw my mom, my dad, and all my brothers and sisters. Then I saw my dad. I just pumped my fist. And he pumped his fist. Stream down my face. I wanted to just really speak real briefly as we continue with the PowerPoint is that being picked up by your dad is like being loved regardless. I don't have to do anything to be loved. And that's huge as we look at moving forward. Is everybody able to see my screen still? What did I do?
No, Rick, no.
Okay.
No, we can't see it.
No.
All right. What did I do? All right, apologize about that. Let's see. There we go. So really what we're trying to do is talk about, picking your child up, and after he got to the point where he got too heavy to pick him up, he was able to pick him up from the perspective of his lens and his filter being changed. One of the things that we talk often about in running groups across the state is the difference between discipline and punishment. And sometimes they get twisted, right? And so when we talk about discipline, it comes from the Latin word disciplus, and it means to teach, to guide, to show the way. Now it's your turn. Discipline imparts knowledge and skill to teach, coach, educate, to instruct, to shamar, to guard, to protect. But punishment means to penalize. And so many times
we're looking at penalizing, because that's how my father taught. That's how he began to correct me, by penalizing. And we as the father, not just the father to our own biological children, but the father to a community, the father to those in your sphere of influence, have to learn how to teach, to guide, to engage. We have to be able to learn a tolerance, right? Allowing people to have a voice. It is important for us as we move forward to be able to recognize this on those levels. I want to move to the next slide here. And I'm finding myself kind of challenged here. Where am I? There I am. It speaks, wow, I'm really struggling today. It speaks about a good father is one of the most unsung, unpraised, unnoticed, and yet one of the most valuable assets in our society. So we do an exercise. Watch this exercise. We ask, what would you keep, toss, or add about your father, right? So for me, I would deal with that as the things that I would keep about my father. He had an excellent work ethic, right? He would go to work. He might be drunk, high, or whatever, but he had an excellent work ethic. Today, my father is my hero, right? He's 84 years old doing his thing. But back then, I couldn't really handle that. I call it my misery. It had become somewhat my ministry or my message, because now I'm learning to pick up those things that he either did not do well, or those areas that unmet needs were always available or necessary. So watch this. When we say, what would you keep? I would keep his work ethic. I would toss his addiction. I would toss his controlling nature. I would toss him being so demanding. I would toss some of those things. Now, mind you, I picked up a lot of the stuff that my mother had, right? Because she was an enabler. She was the rescuer. And so I said, I wasn't going to be like my dad. Somebody work with me for a minute. Anybody ever said they weren't going to be like their dad, but they became just like him? Because the thing I saw is the thing I became. So what would I add then? So I would add then affection. You know, one of the things that my dad didn't get, right, until he was 50 years old, is just a hug from his father. He didn't get that he was told that he loved him. His father loved him. And so one of the things that I wanted to do is to break that pattern, break that paradigm, right, and start hugging my kids much earlier, to show the affection much earlier. I'm a sensitive guy. I tell guys, I tell my wife, she was probably one of the first guys that she seen cry, right? Because I'll cry over a movie. I'm very sensitive. But, you know, it's okay for men to cry. We'll ask guys, when's the last time have you cried? So it's important for us to be able to show that it's okay to shed some tears. What we do also is when we talk in groups and settings, as we train other trainers, we talk about the last time that we cried. Because crying doesn't mean just water coming out of our eyes. Crying is when I go back to an unhealthy behavior, when I go back to a coping mechanism that causes me to go backwards and be unfulfilled and to cause depression and anxiety. So it distorts my purpose and my assignment. Some of the rules of engagement, I'm not going to go through them all, but these are some of the things that I think is very crucial. Just feeling appreciated and honored. The ability to engage proactively, being creative, taking ownership for my struggles. Watch this. I don't know about you all, but sometimes it was hard for me to even say I'm sorry, to even ask for forgiveness. If I want my children to do it, if I want people in my spheres of influence to do it, I need to be that model. I need to own the fact that I made some mistakes, and now I can change that, and I'm open to say that. So we talk about vulnerability and transparency. We talk about passion, right? We talk about being able to make others shine. I think the greatest healthy father is able to empower others to shine. One of the things I loved about this group today, and just the people that are in, is that so many guys and the treasure that they have was shining. And I'm like, I'm that cheerleader, right? I want to be able to enjoy your moment of shine, especially as I move forward. The other thing here, as we moving down towards the end of our PowerPoint, we say a father does three things intentionally. He exhort, right? He edify, and he brings comfort. So to exhort, I don't know about you all, but you cannot be around me and not be encouraged. A healthy father doesn't mind encouraging others. Edify, we build people up, right? What's the treasure on the inside of the person that's next to you? You know how many orphans there are? You know that foster care has so many kids at risk, never knew their father, dealing with issues of abandonment and rejection. I'm one of those guys. Even though my father was there, I had big-seated abandonment issues, big-seated rejection issues. So for me, I had to learn still to peel the layers off the onion, right, to deal with rejection. And then the last thing here is to bring comfort, to bring security, right, to console. These things are important as we move forward. One of the things that we're doing now is healing the father wound. And so we have a targeted audience across New York State, right, where we've identified 10 backbone agencies that really relate to the 10 regions. So again, I know that in Westchester, right, that's region 8 and whatnot. And so we want to be able to work on how do we deal with the administration and how do we deal with those in leadership about establishing a fatherhood presence. The local Department of Social Services in every county that we in, they refer guys to places like the Fatherhood Connection. They refer them, they're mandated to come. We have to, some guys are mandated and some guys come from faith-based, come from all over. I believe that every church, every church should have in their men's department something that deals with father and talk about the issues that we go through on a regular basis. And as I get ready to come to my conclusion here, we believe that in every seed of greatness, there's a call, there's a nurturing, there's a garden that we all have. And what is it like to be able to help somebody else's garden to grow, to speak to it, to affirm, to approve, and to celebrate? Everyone has a narrative, right? Everyone has that. What's your narrative? What's your story? I want to hear that story because in that story is a message. Each person has a filter in way she or he view their life and their purpose. The measure is discerned by the trajectory of his assignment. Much of what I perceive as painful leads me to the problem or the purpose and the measure to solve. So in every seed, right, it's trapped in every seed is a tree. We believe that if we provide the nurturance, it will happen. Our quote here is the ultimate measure of a father is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in the times of challenges and controversy, dealing with coping behaviors. Sometimes I've survived, right, to get by some trauma in my life. However, I've outgrown that behavior or coping mechanism. I have to deal with those defense mechanisms or it'll keep me stuck, right? And so we talk about that. We talk about the fact that there's power and influence in your name. Right? Your name, these are all last names here. Watch this. McDonald's, Fisher-Price, Kraft, Pillsbury, Porsche, Versace, Walgreens. These are all last names. Your measure of greatness is attached to your last name, right? Your love above and beyond what your past has been. We believe that you still can accomplish your purpose and your divine assignment. Leaving a legacy is what we're after. Our first name is about you, but the last name is about us. And in my closing, I wanted to just show a little bit of this, and then we're going to be out of here.
Hello, my name is Reggie Cox. I am the founder and executive director of the Fatherhood Connection. The Fatherhood Connection is a movement, it's not a program. It is our objective to deal with the post-traumatic father syndrome. America leads the nation in fatherless homes. My passion is to educate, equip, and empower other men according to their original intent. We're coming to your neighborhood, your area, your backyard, your community to be able to affirm, approve, and celebrate you. Are you ready? Come join the team.
So that would be all that I have. I really appreciate the fact that you guys were able to kind of hear the message and hopefully the story. I'll give it back to Reverend Trollinger.
Simply fantastic, simply fantastic, simply fantastic, simply fantastic. I'm gaining my cues. We are way over time. So I'm going to give it over to Frank or Donnie.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Reverend Trollinger. Thank you, Reggie. Thank you, Shamari. Um, thank you, Matt. I think that this whole evening has been a great, great success. I thank all of you for hanging in here with us. I know we went a little longer than we wanted, but we thank you and we honor you. We appreciate you because really we're trying to inspire and empower our fathers to be better. And as Reggie said, to have legacy, right? To be men of greatness. And it's not necessarily about your first name. I like that, Reggie. It's about your last name. So,
Yes.
Reverend Trollinger, I'm coming over to Calvary. I want to hear that in a sermon. All right, you wrote that down.
Listen. I breathe, teach that all the time. Ask my son what his last name is. Okay.
All right.
He'll tell you.
I'm going to just go to Tom for a minute. Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about the evaluation?
Yes, first of all, I just had the experience of like watching a Monday night football game and then the game gets really good and you're like, I'm gonna go to no, can't go to sleep now. No, this is good. I'm here. So that's what happened to me in the last hour. So I'm posting a link to the evaluation. You can click on it. We're not going to take a whole bunch of time to fill it out, but click on it, get it open on your computer, and then when you have time, fill it out. This evaluation will also be emailed out to all the participants. So it's just a way of gathering information and making these conferences even better in the future. So it's right over in the chat. Just click on it, open it up, and maybe right after we get off, you can fill it out.
Yeah, so we're after 9 o'clock. We're not going to take any Q&As because we've gone far too longer. But we're going to take comments and fill out the evaluation. We'll get all of the information back to our panelists so that they can have some feedback in terms of their own presentation. We want them to hear and to know what the feedback is. We thank all of you, beginning with Mark Muriel and our employment panelists with Donnie and everyone. And this panel presentation dealing with fathering in the midst of COVID. We want you to come back with us on December 9th. Our work is not done. We're looking at health and well-being. On December 9th, 6 o'clock, we'll have a second session, which will speak about our personal health, our mental health, our emotional health, how we're coping in the midst of COVID. Again, I want to thank everyone for being a part of this wonderful presentation. Please come back on December 9th and be a part of the last piece of our 2021 Fathering Conference. Thank you all. Be well, get home safely, and we'll see you on December 9th. Thank you.